Sword of Coming Chapter 1180. The warm sun is shining, the spring is swaying, the flower letter has a period, and the plum, and peach blossoms bloom one after another. In the Beijing Lilikang, where there are many bookstores, a handsome young man hangs a purple-gourd wine jug with a glossy pulp on his waist. He sits at the door of the shop under the sun, and eats a bowl of pea yellow that he bought on the way. While haggling with the shopkeeper of the shop that I know in the house, saying that the books I like are old girls who can't get married, and flirting with the proprietress who set up a roadside stall to sell books in the bookstore next door, and at the same time here waiting for the rabbit to stand still, kill 3 birds with 1 stone. He borrowed a bench for the shopkeeper of the young drunkard's shop, sat behind the counter and carefully wiped a piece of imitation official porcelain, raised his head, and looked at the rogue guy outside the door who was looking sideways with the shop beside him, and said with a smile, "Chao Shirlang, if you dare to touch her hand in broad daylight and hug her a few more times, I will sell you all these books from my shop at a 50% discount. How about that?" The young man picked up a piece of pea yellow and threw it into his mouth. He smiled and said, "Forget it during the day, bad reputation, can you go to the corner at night?" The voices of the 2 men outside the door were not small, and they obviously did not deliberately avoid the MILF. The woman heard the words and grabbed a book from the stall, laughed and scolded her as if she was dead, and smashed the book at the door. That handsome man who has no righteous behavior all day long? Is it interesting that one has no eggs and one has no guts? That Chao Shirlang is not a nickname, but a genuine official servant of the Dali officialdom, and the official is in charge of the official's personnel department. The young man caught the hidden weapon without reading the title of the book. He just took a sniff and threw the book back to the beautiful woman's stall. It's boring. Chao Jengson's eyes shifted a little, and he saw a few people walking out from an antique shop in the distance. All of them were foreigners from Beiju Luzhou. A tall middle-aged man, wearing an old mink hat with a lot of wear on his head, a padded jacket and a pair of suede boots on his feet. The man's face is not bitter at all, but he is poor. It was the Lu Mahelu clan swordsman Lu Su. Xuanhuan of Sanlang Temple, with the appearance of a teenager, wearing a mud gold robe. On this trip south to cross continents to visit Beipingzu, the heir to the Sanlang Temple nicknamed Yuan Yiqi, and Yuan Zhangshui, still brought only 2 followers, Fanyu and Wufu, who traveled far away. This female martial arts master had been to the Dali Suedu and Dadu battlefields and forgot to die. Therefore there was a detailed record of the Dali rites. Fanyu visited the mountains and rivers in Dali. After getting the customs clearance letter, if Fanyu publicly reveals her identity, she must treat each other with courtesy. If she intends to travel in brocade clothes at night, she does not need to disturb her travels. The high-ranking gods in Dali always have such a gift list, which is convenient for viewing and entertaining guests at any time. Whether it is a mountain monk in a foreign country or a warrior in the rivers and lakes, as long as he has repaid the greatly with morality and righteousness on the battlefield, the court should treat him as a state scholar and treat him with courtesy. Yuan Yingjing Lao Jianxiu Lu Wuding is different from Fanyu, who is similar to a family son. The old man is the first-class worshipper of Sanlang Temple. The annual salary is quite considerable and he takes a lot of money. The disciple protector used to be Yuan Yichu, but now it's just Yuan Xian. When Lao Jianxiu was young, he used to be a cultivator of genealogy, and then he became a lonely and wild ghost Shanzi Yeshu. It was because Lu Wuding had just entered the Golden Core realm, and it was only a few days after he left the border. I secretly went to demolish the ancestral hall of another family. It was the first time I did this kind of thing. I didn't have enough experience in the rivers and lakes. I was careless and didn't hide my identity well. Originally a descendant of the patriarch who was expected to inherit the head, a young genius with a bright future, had to be expelled from the mountain gate and was silent. But looking back at the questioning sword 200 years ago, the old man never regretted it. So young and vigorous the old man has been young. Chao Gingxin hurriedly swallowed the last mouthful of pea yellow, tossed his sleeves, stood up and shook his robe, smiled and beckoned, "Lu Jianxian Yuan Gongzi Lu Jianxian Fan Zongshi." "Ha Lu and Lu Tongyin, I would have called only one if I knew it earlier." The young waiter used a very authentic Beiju Luzhou elegant language. Lu Su frowned and asked, "Who are you? Enshrined by the Ministry of Punishment? Want to check our identities?" The people on the mountain who dealt with the monks from other villages in the Dali dynasty were usually worshipped by the Ministry of Punishment. Heaven comes, Yuan Xian had already recognized the identity of the other party and said with a smile, "Uncle Lu, not from the Ministry of Punishment, but Chao Shirlang from the Department of Officials in the capital of Dali, a well-known person on the mountain. This person is indeed very famous, and he was able to make an exception for the Song Dynasty Emperor Dali to allow Chao Gingxin to bring a jug to the yamen, but it was stipulated that he could only drink 1 jug of wine a day, and no refills were allowed on that day. As a reward, he gave Chao Shilang a jar of Changchun Palace Fairy Brew, euphemistically called fishing with wine, so that Chao Gingxin would not make excuses to ask for leave and not go to Mao. According to official rumors, Chao Gingxin, who returned to Beijing to become a servant, had prepared more than a dozen reasons early to shirk all kinds of official duties that he felt would be the same with him or without him. In the north of Luzhou North, the north-south Zhongqiao mountain runs along a large river. The mountain is narrow and long, and the whole majestic mountain range is like a looking at the eyebrows. Luomahe Lushur and Sanlang Temple Yuanshur are located in the mountains with extremely rich minerals, occupying the cornucopia and the arsenal respectively. Chao Gingxin gave Yuan Xian a thumbs up. Young man is very knowledgeable. Yuan Xian said with a smile, Chao Shilang in fact am not too young. Chao Gingxin nodded and said, then we are the same, tender-faced, and take advantage of it. Lu Su asked, from the Ministry of Officials? What are you asking us to do? Chao Gingxin smiled and said, actually I wasn't looking for you, I was waiting for someone with you. I've been a neighbor with him for many years but I've never seen him. Yuan Xian asked, could it be that Qin Shanju? Chao Gingxin smiled and said, young Master Yuan is really smart, you can guess right away. Yuan Xian slandered in his heart, whoever we are looking for you will wait for, it is hard to guess. What's more, the Longquan County Kiln Supervision and Construction Office is not a neighbor to the Luopao Mountain. Lu Su said, what are you doing to see him? Actually, this question is a bit out of date. Chao Gingxin of the Ministry of Personnel did not care what Lu Su did when he came to Dali, and of course Lu Su, the sword repairer, did not care who Chao Gingxin wanted to see. But it can be seen that the relationship between Lu Su and Qin Pingan is definitely not as ordinary as what he and Yuan Xian said. However, Chao Gingxin didn't look annoyed, patted the wine gourd on his waist, turned his head and smiled at the beautiful woman who set up a stall to dry books and asked, Manager Nangong, how do you say something? The woman said with a smile, one of Susie's famous articles is orderly. The woman said that I have had a bucket of wine in storage for a long time, so that my son needs it from time to time. Chao Gingxin smiled and said, I still need to introduce myself. My name is Chao Gingxin. It is relatively unhappy and unwilling to be a minister, and if there is no noble person in the DPRK, it is difficult to want to be an official. Chao Gingxin turned his head and said with a smile, the Lord is here. Lu Su and Lu Wooding looked at each other. This surname Chao is not only a qi practitioner but also has a high realm. Chao Gingxin glanced at Lu Su and Lu Wooding. Once upon a time, a qi practitioner in the nascent soul realm, let alone a sword cultivator, was already unattainable. Now looking at these old gods it seems like that. Just like when Chao Gingxin was young, I remember the first time I went to visit Lu Jia at the alley outside the building. Because I knew the realm of the old in advance, I was still a little nervous. I had to worry about the etiquette when I brought 2 pots of good wine. If it's not enough, will I have a closed door? Looking at it now, I can drink wine with Brother Lu. When he was young, Chao Gingxin was a little worried about what he saw, heard, and talked about state affairs with the elders of the family. Today, the children of our Dali dynasty have already regarded the Dali dynasty as one of the most powerful countries in the world, and regard this kind of thing as the most natural thing. In particular, the Anichi Lane and Cheer Street began to calculate their respective pros and cons with the Dadan dynasty and the Xuanmi dynasty in Middle-earth, guessing when Dali would catch up. Actually, it wasn't like this before. I remember that when Chao Gingxin was young, he and his grandfather once asked about the official anecdote that was famous for the government and the opposition. Since Sun Qin had resigned from the Ministry of Officials, and with his stubborn personality, he had established an academy in his hometown. Why did he want to return to the officialdom? It was really Cui Guoshi who personally came forward and invited Sun Qin to be in charge of the Ministry of Military Affairs in Beijing. After all, Chao Gengxin's grandfather is the owner of the Chao family in Shangzhou Kingdom. The outside world can only rely on guesswork, but this old man can ask Sun Qin the truth in person. It turned out that Cui Guoshi had visited the local academy and indeed personally invited Sun Qin to return to the officialdom, and the reason for persuading the stubborn Sun Qin was very simple. Cui Yu asked Sun Qin to lift his eyelids so he might as well take a longer view. Since it will soon be the land of Dali, why do you still care about those trivial things? If the anecdote is limited to this, Chao Gingxin actually thinks that Cui Guo's teacher is brilliant, and it will not make the boy feel numb in his scalp and cold in his back. It turned out that the old man told his most important grandson a more trivial matter, saying that when Cui Guoshi appeared in that private academy, The academy that he had worked so hard to establish had already been turned into a government-run academy, and the new appointment was made. The mountain chief is already on his way to his post, and that mountain chief is a great scholar in the literary world who was originally disliked by Xianxia, a grandfather and grandson of 3 generations and 5 scholars. Personal grievances. It is estimated that Xianxia will be disgusted to the point of death. Cui Yu has given you one choice and there is absolutely no second choice to choose from. You are either suffocated to death in your hometown, or you obediently go to the capital of Dali to become a high-ranking official, serve the country, the people, yourself, the society and the common people, and the 3 immortality. Therefore Chao Gingxin came to a conclusion very early that the smarter the person, the more afraid of Cui Guosher. Chao Gingxin has been the kiln supervisor for so many years. Does he really think that Chao Duzhao doesn't want to make a successful career? It is nothing more than that Chao Gingxin is smart enough to not dare to be smart. After leaving the Thousand Steps Gallery, Jiang Shangzhen said that he was going to Changchun Palace to do some private affairs. Xiego is still at the Fire Temple. Chen Pingan only brought Xiao Mo by his side, and came here to find Lu Su and his party. Chao Gung bowed his heart and took the initiative to apologize. I have been an official in a small town for many years, and I did not go to Luopao Mountain to visit Qinshanju, which is a lot of rude. I don't have to go to the Office of Supervision and Construction to visit my parents, so it should be even. Qin Pingan returned the salute and asked with a smile, why is Shirlang Chao here waiting for me waiting here? Chao Gingxin smiled and said, as expected, I can't hide it from Master Qin Shanju. Qin Pingan asked, anything to discuss? Chao Gingxin shook his head and smiled and said, I just met once, said hello and I am satisfied. If Qin Shanju needs to invite a friend to drink, he will only say that there are large and small restaurants over the Changpu River, and if you report my name you can book your account. No money. Qin Pingan wondered, Chao Shilang's salary is so high? Chao Gingxin said boldly, Qin Shanju and his friends drink and drink, the restaurant keeps the accounts, the officials Chao Shirlang owes the debts, and the poor Chao Gingxin pays back the money. Hearing this, Lu Su was in awe. He and Chao Gingxin were not the same and they didn't have the same taste. You didn't need to talk too much to know that they could not be friends, but Chao Gingxin and the second shopkeeper would definitely get along well. Qin Pingan cupped his hands and smiled, Ching Ching, thank you here. After that, Qin Pingan took Lu Su and the others away from Lilikang and asked Lu Su if he had chosen a good inn. Lu Su said that there was no inn for the time being. Now it is very famous on Beipingza Mountain. Of course Lu Su didn't care, anyway Yuan Shen was the one who paid and Yuan Shen naturally didn't care. He didn't spend a lot of ferry money on a trip to Lilikang, and he was worried that he had nowhere to spend. Chao Shirlang returned the small bench to the shop, and finally got what he wanted and bought the books that he had long loved. Seeing this, the proprietress of the shop next door set up a stall and asked curiously, how did the iron rooster pluck his hair, and what kind of ecstasy soup was given to him? Chao Gingxin said with a smile, I told Lao Hong that the person who was standing and chatting with me at the door of his shop just now was the owner of Luopao Mountain. As soon as Lao Hong was happy, he gave me away for nothing. It's really not slander? The woman was suspicious and hurriedly turned her head to look at the back of the blue shirt in the distance and murmured, it's not so handsome, I don't think it's as good as you. I remember that in the past Lilikang bookstore sold a book of landscape travels, and the sales were quite good. Please come by yourself, The Unstoppable Affair. Chao Gingxin put the book into his arms and smiled, be a down-to-earth person, a happy person with a wide heart and a fat body, eat well, drink well and sleep well. Walking out of the noisy Lilikang boundary, Lu Su asked, are we really going to the Changpu River for a drink? Qin Pingan smiled and said, what are you thinking, you can go there with your knees. If you really want to report Chao Jiangxin's name, it's useless and 9 out of 10 restaurants must drive people away. What's more, the restaurant on the side of the Changpu River is relatively heavy, and there are not many places to drink vegetarian wine. Chao Shirlang obviously believes that Shanju Qin dare not go there too much. Yuan Shen took courage and asked shyly, Master Qin Shan, do you still remember me? The last time I was fishing at Tonglu Lake, the person I introduced myself was called Yuan Shen from Sanlang Temple. Qin Pingan nodded and smiled, of course I remember, I have a deep memory. At that time, young Master Yuan was very young and he was an old man. He was kind-hearted, but he was well-mannered. Yuan Shen suddenly looked bright and turned to look at the few people around him. How about it? Or is it a polite word? Lao Jianxiu pretended to be surprised, Fan Yu nodded lightly and was very supportive. Lu Su was a little speechless, how can you be sure, isn't this still a polite word? A little fool like Yuan Shen, when he arrives at the Great Wall of Sword Qi, no matter how much money he has in his pocket, it is useless. He is no better than Wei Jianxian of the Wind Snow Temple, and he will become a number on the account book of the second shopkeeper. The two sides met for the first time in the verdant lake in the Valley of Ghosts. According to the records in the Reassurance Collection, there is a local special product of clam fish, which is full of treasures. According to legends on the mountain, the most mysterious thing is that chi practitioners eat this fish, and they can get rid of it. The entanglement of any nightmare in the world. The higher the cultivator's realm, the more dreamless he becomes. If the cultivator still has more dreams in the fairyland, it is natural that his practice has gone wrong. At that time, Qin Pingan went to Tonglu Lake to try his luck. It was best to catch fish, but it didn't matter if he couldn't. And the last time Yuan Xian traveled to the Valley of Ghosts, it was also by chance. But not as indifferent as Qin Pingan. Because of his great-aunt Yuan Yizhu, she has been plagued by nightmares for 100 years, which has led to the delay in breaking the bottleneck of nascent soul. Although ordinary people can't see the slightest abnormality in her, Yuan Yizhu is actually haggard. If someone skilled can see the truth, she is a skinny and tragic state. It's just that women love beauty and she used a talisman method, but this is an illusion of self-deception, so within 100 years she has only appeared a few times occasionally, even in the ancestral hall. The last time she appeared was when Lu Jinglong visited the Sanlang Temple, and Yuan Yizhu would only be strong. Even if she didn't want him to see his inhuman face, she hoped to give him a few last glances. Since Gao Qing, the heroic spirit of the Ghost Valley, disappeared inexplicably and voluntarily abandoned a Jingguan city, this group of dragons in Headless Ghost Valley was no longer able to compete with the Muyi Mountain, and the Pima Zone completely took over the entire small world. The Sanlang Temple has a good relationship with the Pima sect. Anyway, there is no more interference from Gao Qing. At that time Zhu Quan, who had not yet stepped down as the suzerain, heard about this, so he simply came to a thorough drying up and fishing, letting the crowd. The monks used the water-moving method and used nets to catch fish. As a result, they caught a lot of the silver carp known as the little lake scorpion. The meat was thicker and it was not suitable for the eyes of the gluttons. The only valuable ones were only the two fish whiskers. After the silver carp survived for 100 years, can be used to make treasures such as demon binding ropes, immortal binding ropes, or whiskers. Among them are a few silver carp, which are huge and weigh more than 500 genes. However, compared with the unique clamfish in Tonglu Lake, many large lakes in Beiju Luzhou have silver carp, and they can only be regarded as ordinary things. As for the buckwheat, a pair were also salvaged, but they were not old enough, so they were carefully brought back to the family by the Yuan cultivator. Yuan Yizhu glanced at the two buckwheat and said it was useless. Yuan Yizhu just kept the pair of swimming fish in the courtyard fish tank and teased them in his spare time. Yuan Xian's face was embarrassed. Master Qin, my trip to Aquarius Island is actually looking for you to see the old site of Lizhu Cave and then go to Luopao Mountain. Seeing Yuan Xian twitching and unable to let out a fart for a long time, Lu Su helped him and said, he has an elder with good cultivating aptitude in Sanlang Temple, called Yuan Yizhu, a female sword cultivator with excellent aptitude. About 100 years ago she was in a secret realm ruins, and her Taoist heart was infiltrated by some kind of weirdness. After that, as long as she fell asleep or concentrated her energy, she would be disturbed by nightmares. It is difficult, so it has been stagnant in the nascent soul realm for too many years. Judging from the current situation, Yuan Yizhu's soul will become a muddy mess within a few years, and the immortals will be hard to save. Therefore, a long enough age is needed. As for this fish being able to expel the haunting nightmare, the rumors are true or false. In short, a dead horse is a living horse doctor. Qin Pingan asked in doubt, you didn't ask someone to help you? Yuan's reputation on the mountain is so good, it is reasonable to say that the pass of a cultivator of the nascent soul realm, please ask the cultivator of the ascension realm, and it will be enough to drop 10 times. Lu Su shook his head and said, Yuan Yizhu is after all a woman in a boudoir, and I guess she has something to hide, so she doesn't want to go to Pitafeng to find the real Huolong, and Sanlang Temple didn't say hello to the heavenly monarch of the Chongshan department. At first, the ancestor of the Sanlang Temple wanted to discuss the matter behind Yuan Yiku's back, but Yuan Yichu, who had expected it, had already said a few harsh words, and the ancestor of the Yuan family had to give up. Her stubborn temper, no one can beat it. Qin Pingan became more and more confused and asked, then why did you think of coming to me? Huolong Jinren and Chongshan Department Yang Tianjun are men, so am I a woman? Although on the battlefield of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the young hidden officer did pretend to be a female sword cultivator. Originally, it was very well hidden, but it was leaked out for some reason. If it is said that he was confused by strange nightmares and hurt his heart, Qin Pingan's first thought was that Lu Qin could help interpret the dream, and I believed that he would definitely be able to catch it. It is a pity that Master Lu has returned to the Qingming world at this moment. Then there is the student Shui Dongshan, who is very accomplished in the spirit of the soul. But if Yuan Yizhu didn't want to let the male Qi practitioners help, it would be very troublesome. Otherwise Xiao Mo's spinning the cocoon is also a must. Lu Su said, that old man who proclaimed himself the great king of Heiha, used the old dragon cave as a dojo. It raised a pair of golden lobsters that were old enough to give his daughter a dowry. It was only in the old dragon cave that the old man was born. Yuan has been raised for 800 years, and it is estimated that they are the ancestors of the squid. But according to some gossip, it is rumored that you went to the Ghost Valley back then, and the old Yuan returned to the temple to practice. Sanlang Temple, the ancestor of the Yuan family, went there personally, and only after asking, did he find out that even a piece of celadone water that was used as a fish tank was stolen, along with the clam fish, and Lao Yuan could not do anything about it. As for the Xiao Yuan, whose name is Fu Hai Yuan Jun, and a very cherished carved mother copper coin in the Laolong cave, they mysteriously disappeared at the same time, and their whereabouts are still unknown. Lao Yuan also prayed to Yuan Laozu to help find it. The whereabouts of its daughter. This is the dowry that Lao Yuan gave her, so she won't be a thief. If it is said that she eloped with someone, then Xiao Yuan has formed the appearance of a queen, and she is also a first-class hero. Now I want to know each other. Hearing this, Qin Pingan knew it and his face was a little embarrassed. Qin Shanzhu, who is upright and beautiful, has a few things that he is reluctant to mention. Except for the fake female cultivator at the Great Wall of Sword Qi, most of the things that happened in Beiju Luzhou, in addition to the trip to the Ghost Valley, also I was invited by the ghosts in the mountains to fight poems, and then I was doing business with Dao Changsun's partner at the Xianfu site. At that time I was still young, I just felt that the world was big and I was not in my hometown, who would know or remember to do it myself what? When Lao Tzu traveled to Beiju Luzhou, he just acted as a foolish old man and occasionally picked up junk. How could he be the same as the black-clothed scholar who didn't get away with nothing and didn't grow an inch of grass? On that trip to the Valley of Mysterious Creatures, he and the Yi Xiu, who called himself Yang Mu Mao, who was formed by beheading 3 corpses, were intrigued all the way, not only working together to make money, but also changing ways to pit each other. One is Yang Mu Mao, who sees injustice on the road, and the other who faints when he sees blood. As for the last time the two sides met again, it was already in the Ascension City in the colorful world. Qin Pingan said, Yuan Xian, I only have a clue about the return of the pair of columbine fish, but I haven't been able to determine anything yet. I can ask you for it right away. Just wait for my news in the near future. 3 mountain mirrors, a pair of golden crayfish from the old dragon cave, and the priceless carving mother, which was once cast by a hidden immortal of Qing Dizong, and there are many harvests, all of which are black-clothed scholar Yang Mu Mao, and it was easy to earn from the robbery in the Ghost Valley. Compared with Chen Haoran's stop-and-go picking up small junk, he can earn some hard money with a hammer in the east and a hammer in the west, which is incomparable. Although Qin Pingan still doesn't know the whereabouts of the little turtle and a pair of cockles, he guesses that it is doomed to be inseparable from the Yunshao Palace. Moreover, he is now, in name, the boxing master of a certain prince of the Dayuan dynasty. In fact, after that Xiao Yuan took refuge in Yang Mu Mao, he did get a piece of landscape creation. Just as the black-clothed scholar said by the river at the time, he kept many imperial edicts with jade seals in his house, and he accumulated a lot of freshmen. Do I just fill in a name and you can take office and become of mountains and rivers? According to the agreement or threatened by the ruthless Yang Mu Mao, Xiao Yuan did not dare to reveal his whereabouts after leaving the Ghost Valley. As for the 2 dowry fish, they have nothing to do with her anymore, and they are now kept in a pond in the Chongshan administration. How many world affairs and people's hearts have gone around in a circle, but they are still in place. Yuan Xian bowed his hands and thanked him. On the way here, Uncle Lu said that the second shopkeeper will either not nod, but as long as he nods, the matter is safe. Qin Pingan smiled and said that you don't have to be so outspoken, I am a regular customer of your Saburo temple. Yuan Xian curiously asked why he said this, and Qin Pingan took out Lu Jianxian and said that he asked him to help buy 2 pieces of Lingbao armor. As soon as Yuan Xian asked the price, he nodded and said that the ant's face was still great, so if he came to bargain, it would cost more than a dozen guyes money. Qin Pingan was fairly familiar with the capital of Dali. He had been to Lilikang before, and when it was time to eat, he took them to a nearby restaurant for a meal. Hearing Yuan Xian said that Uncle Lu was already the owner of the house, Qin Pingan hurriedly congratulated him. He didn't plan to drink alcohol at first, so he ordered a few pots of wine from the restaurant, and the dining table became a wine table. The Lu family in Luomahi has a total of 16 houses, and the house is full of talents. Moreover, unlike the general wealthy family, the Lu family is known in the whole continent for making a fortune and being diligent and thrifty. However, Lu Su was not willing to take over the family business, and was more willing to concentrate on practicing swordsmanship. When he was in the nascent soul realm, he went to the Sword Chi Great Wall, saying that it was to break the bottleneck and enter the upper 5 realms. But the elders in Liu's ancestral hall, who do not frown, not only are they afraid that Lu Su will not be able to get along there, but also that even if Lu Su is in the realm of Jade, one day North Luzhou will need to have an event. Island Sacrificial Sword. So after Lu Su returned to his hometown, grandfather saw the first sentence of this grandson, and it would be better if he was not the head of the house. I never thought about a certain family ancestral hall discussion, just using a cross-continental ferry, in exchange for a talented head of the family. Lu Su likes to drink, but he has always been slow, and when he rarely drinks happily he never gets bored. This is true in my hometown, and it is also true in the Great Wall of Sword Chi. I'm a rich man, why pretend to be outside? Beiju Luzhou has the largest number of sword cultivators, the most addicted to alcohol, and the best amount of alcohol. What are the taboos when it comes to the wine table? And the Sword Chi Great Wall itself calls Dong Sanging and Chi Tingji by their first names. When you cultivate and follow the local customs, there is nothing you dare not say or cannot say. Yeo Mo was the second shopkeeper who had heard about Lu Zu's family background early on and knew that he was the young head of the Lu family in the Mule Horse River. In the words of those who are both drunkards and nurses, that is, a fat and strong fat pig is running around at the door of the second shopkeeper. So in the beginning, when the wine shop business was not so prosperous, I always thought of Lu Su as a rich and wealthy rich man, and asked him if he wanted to sit on the estate together. Qin Pingan got tired of entanglement, so he told Qin Pingan frankly that he went out and never had the habit of bringing money. After that, the second shopkeeper often invited him instead of inviting him to squat on the roadside drinking together. It seemed that he really regarded him as the kind of poor man who went back to inherit the family business and had spare money. Lu Su didn't lie, he didn't pay attention to everything except practicing swords. The family was worried that he was in a foreign land where he was unfamiliar, and swordsmanship always needed money from the gods, so they sent the money to Chunbanzhai on Dianchuan Mountain every 3 weeks and 5, but Lu Su never went to withdraw the money, and later sent it directly. When he arrived at Sun Jiyuan's mansion, Lu Su still pretended not to know, so Sun Jiyuan greeted him and said that your family had saved money in the mansion, and Lu Su also said that he didn't need it, just keep saving it. Until the end, Lu Su had left the Great Wall of Sword Chi, and in Chunfanzhai and Sun Jiyuan's private residence, Lu Su did not take any immortal money. The reason why the wine shop went over to support it as soon as it opened, Lu Zu's original intention was to drink the taste of hometown wine there. As for the result, it's hard to say. There are 10 people in a gambling game, 8 nurses, and 1 is Qin Pingan who is in the village. Only one of them is still complaining about his bad luck, and he will definitely make a lot of money next time. Now that the wine table is open for drinking, Fan Yu filled a large bowl of wine and offered toast to Master Qin Shanzhu, and she drank it all in one go. It turned out that she was rescued once by Zheng Qian when she broke through the battlefield of Dadu in Aquarius Island. To be precise, Fan Yu was grabbed by Zheng Qian's shoulder and fell directly out of the murderous encirclement. Fan Yu later learned that the martial arts senior nicknamed Zheng Qingming was actually the founding disciple of Qin Shanzhu, whose real name was Pei Qian. As a teacher and a master, Qin Pingan likes to hear this from others the most now. When he was full, Lu Wuding spoke the least but drank the most. Lao Jinxiu was so drunk that he staggered without anyone helping him. Yuan Xian knew that this was because Grandpa Lu had practiced swords in his life, but he had never been to the Great Wall of Sword Chi. Therefore there are bowls of wine on the table today, and the old man drank it, all drinking the guilt that poured into the bowl of wine from his heart. His face flushed red after drinking, not only because of his incompetent drinking power, but also in the face of this young man from the Great Wall of Sword Chi, who was also the last hidden official of a foreigner. The old man was guilty and blushed. There are so many things in the world, the power of alcohol is not hesitant, it is difficult, and this body cannot help itself. Earlier at the wine table, the old man said that he wanted to toast Chen Yingguan with a toast. After that, the old man drank by himself and became more and more silent. Lu Su raised his elbow and tapped Qin Pingan beside him lightly, motioning you to comfort Lao Lu with a few words. The second shopkeeper, you are the best at this, see if you can help him untie his knot. Back then, in that small wine shop, the second shopkeeper came here with his mouth open, and he never made drafts for bragging. A crowd of people squatting and drinking on the street liked to listen to the second shopkeeper's story without spending any money. Qin Pingan shook his head. Why put salt on Lao Jiangxia's wound? Besides, if you haven't been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, you haven't been there. I don't care about the sky or the ground, and I don't care what your reasons and difficulties are. Therefore, at the previous wine table you have to tell Shanzhu Qin or simply call Qin Pingan by name. It doesn't matter. Toast, I am a junior on the mountain. I will definitely drink it, and I will definitely pay my respects to my senior. Oh. But since you Lu Wuding used the title of a hidden official, you are also a sword cultivator from Luzhou and Beiju. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with you. Lu Su said in a heartfelt voice. Do you know Mirage? Several Qi practitioners followed me to the liquor store to drink. They were obviously not from the Jianxia sect, nor did they start with Zong, but they died on the side of the Sword Qi Great Wall. Lu Dingwu was once the direct disciple of Mirage, and he almost became the head of the sect, but because he fought for others, he had a sword fight with Hai Shi, injured many sword cultivators over there, and was expelled from his division. Otherwise, when he became Jindan back then, if there was no accident, he would soon cross the Hanging Mountain and go to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Lu Su was silent for a moment, looked at the old man in front of him with a sad back and continued, Lu Wuding feels that he has already repaid his favor with the Yuan family, and he just resigned to worship at the Sanlang Temple not long ago, and plans to go to the wild world alone, but Yuan Xian didn't know about it yet, so Lu Wuding didn't plan to tell him about it. Lu Wuding still doesn't know about it. It was his master who did it on purpose and asked Hai Shi to cooperate in a play. A good seedling can stay in Beiju Luzhou, practice swords well, and one day practice the upper 5 realms. As to whether it is a Mirage School genealogical cultivator, it does not matter. Because Lu Wuding's master is very clear, with this disciple's temperament, Jindanjian Jianxiu, who is also the next head of a Mirage, is destined to not have to return home alive when he arrives at the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Qin Pingan hesitated for a moment, rubbed his face with his hands, nodded, walked to the old man's side and said in his heart, Senior Lu, there are 2 Qi practitioners from Beiju Luzhou, and the other is the sea market that hangs over the sea. The sword cultivator of the sect is called Yuha, a sword cultivator of the Jindanjing realm, and the other is a direct disciple of the head of the Mirage sect, called Gao Jia, the peak master of Dengxian Peak. Strange, how can 2 sect disciples who clearly have a feud, how can they drink together? Once drinking together, I just listened to them chatting. Yuha said that what happened back then was his fault first, sorry for that high festival he was expelled from the division. The other one started yelling, saying that if Lu Shibua hadn't seen through his identity, he would have been our head, and we would have a jade pure realm sword cultivator in Beiju Luzhou. Aizhou is going to be shorter than us, you have no ability to cooperate, you only have a broken mouth, you can't drink it. Today's wine, whoever is the will pay the bill, and the second shopkeeper will bring 2 pots of good wine over. The old man listened carefully, was silent for a moment and said with a smile, It's all a matter of mood, there's actually nothing right or wrong. Senior, if it's really uncomfortable in my heart, how can I scold you? I'm very good at this. If you start with 100 sentences, there will be no repetition. Let's go, Lao Jianxian Lu, let's have a drink alone. Calling a nascent soul realm sword cultivator a sword immortal is nothing, but it is actually an even more excessive Lu Lao sword immortal. And the rest. Go and come back. Then make a deal with the hidden officer. Strive so. Try to drink what you have left over from this year in the coming year. Lu Zu's trip to the south was to find Qin Pingan for a drink. That's all, there was nothing to talk about. Isn't drinking with friends the right thing to do? So after drinking, Lu Su was going to make a trip to Old Longqing alone. There was some business on the mountain and he wanted to talk to the Fu family. As for Luopao Mountain, whether to go to see the situation or not. Yuan Xian's 3, it's a worthwhile trip, of course you can go back to your home, you need to go to the Xinjia and recommended by Qin Pingan, send a message from Feijian and send it back to the family to announce the good news. Lu Wuding escorted Yuan Xian back to Sanlang Temple, and he would rush to the wild world, and then he would go to the Jianxi Great Wall ruins. Lu Su followed them to the inn and stayed at the inn. Yuan Xian smiled and said, Uncle Lu, Master Qin Shan really made you a friend. Lu Su smiled and asked, How? Yuan Xian said, I heard that the inn is famous for killing pigs and slaughtering guests, and it has a very general reputation on the mountain. Lu Su said, It's hard to say if you don't treat me as a friend. I guess that inn Qin Pingan has a dividend. Fan Yu said, Not really. Lu Su said, I don't think so, that's because you are not familiar with Qin Pingan. Fan Yu became more and more strange. So, how could you 2 become such good friends? It's not like one of them likes to be in business, and one who thinks more money likes to be taken advantage of. Lu Su said indifferently, "My generation of sword cultivators, what is money?" A xianxia ferry was on its way back to the north. Suddenly there were monks who claimed to be worshipped by the Dali punishment department. They found a few of them and asked Bai Deng to go to the Dali capital immediately, saying that the Beijing rites asked Bai Deng to discuss the iron talisman. Jiang Shueishan fills the gap. Bai Deng previously went out with the ghost Yinlu and Jingha's direct disciple Gao Geng, and never thought that when he came back he would be the Tiefu River water god. Gao Geng and Yinlu both congratulated Bai Deng, and the Dali rite said it was a discussion, but in fact there is something to discuss, isn't it obvious? I went out of Luapa Mountain before, the sky is high and the earth is wide, how do you feel? Carefree. A few of them at least have a great freedom of, I don't want to drink today, I can stop drinking. Yupujing Jianxiu Bai Deng's avenue root foot, belongs to Jiaolong, was born in the old emperor's family on the mountain in the past, and is one of the land dragon palaces in the ancient Shu. Although the large and small dragon palaces on the sea and land back then were as numerous as the hair of a cow, there were a lot of dragon children and dragon grandsons, and their descendants were very complicated, but not everyone could call them true dragons. On the mountain before, a few of them were inexplicably ordered once to go to a small vassal country south of Dadu. It was a trivial matter. Gao Geng was very familiar with the customs and officialdom of the world. There are also many crooked ideas and bad ideas. It is more than enough to be a dog-headed military strategist. Coupled with Bai Deng's sword cultivator status and Jade Pure Realm, one errand can be said to be flawless and beautiful. Originally, fellow Taoist Bai Deng was about to become a high-ranking deity in one continent, so he should have a drink to congratulate him. There were several kinds of immortal brews on the ferry, but the three of them had a tacit understanding not to mention this. Gathering in Bai Deng's house, Gao Geng said in a heartfelt voice, "Brother Bai is the only thing that is not good for this iron talisman river god, that is, he is deeply involved with the country of the Song dynasty." Yinlu smiled and said, "This kind of great bargain, which is once in a lifetime, will be caught first. As for the luck of the Song family, we will talk about it later." Gao Geng said, "Unless." Yinlu also laughed and said the word, "unless," and the two sides smiled at each other. Unless that Qin Shanzhu win the greatly national teacher. Of course, Bai Deng needs to follow a sacred way, if he wants to successfully get the seal of the Dali court and become an orthodox mountain and water deity in one place. It's just like what Zhao Duanjin, Minister of Rites, asked when discussing matters in the imperial study before, whether there will be any accident for Bai Deng to become the water god. Instead of asking what is the probability of success, you will know that Baiden's road to becoming a god is very smooth as long as there are no major accidents. This is the innate advantage of the gods who belong to Jiaolong. Reborn, shape the golden body, build temples, enjoy the incense of the world, and finally become of the mountains and rivers. The human race is the most difficult and difficult to train. For Bai Deng, who saw the sun again because he was drinking at the same table with someone, he had no idea at all and went to Baidi City in the Middle Earth Divine Continent to jump into the Dragon Gate. The next best thing is to become the righteous of Jianghu in the court of Dali. The first choice is the land of Dali Jingji, and the second choice is the land of Beiyue. The heavier the dragon, the better, and the rest are not considered. As a result, Bai Deng's wish came true and his dream came true. Pushun Fu Dekhong, after returning to the dojo from the capital of Dali, met a wandering Taoist priest who called himself Introspection. The young Taoist priest, who only said his name but did not report his name, entered the towering mountain temple, which is the mountain of the prince of Zhongyue. The name of the mountain god said that Xiaodao encountered some difficulties, and asked the mountain to meet and talk about it. That sneaky Taoist priest who didn't dare to report his real name, said that he came from a small sect that pushed up from the Xiaodao generation, and there was only one master, but he admired Pushun very much, and his admiration couldn't be more. I want to have a discussion with Fu Shanshan so that I can please return a Taoist book and enshrine it well. Fu Dekhong has just walked to the capital of Dali, and he is in a good mood. With humorous words, he walked out of the golden body, and at the same time isolated a quiet world, lest the pilgrims in the temple make a fuss. That Taoist priest, after all, was something from the old collection of his own study, and it was indeed stained with some essence of incense. Unexpectedly, the Taoist priest didn't appreciate it, let alone know the goods. Just reading the title of the book, he began to complain that it was not a fairy book on the mountain, and it was not worth a lot of money. He found a Taoist book in the middle saying that you, the mountain master, is so big as an official but you are stingy, and you teach people to be disappointed. No matter how poor the small Taoist is, you know that you will come to the door with a generous gift. Cursing, young Taoist priest will take that. He threw the book to Fu Dekong and left Pushan angrily, but with a bang, his head slammed into the incense-scented landscape restriction. Fu Dekong had to apologize to the Taoist priest with a smile and open the restriction. As for the Book of Taoism, which was a ritual exchange, Fu Dekong did not take over, but just let it hover in the air. After the Taoist priest came down the mountain, Fu Dekong waved his sleeves and moved the book to the warehouse dedicated to miscellaneous books. Unexpectedly, after a while, the immediate supervisor, physician Jin Qing, appeared in the Pushan hall with a livid face, and asked Fu Dekong if he had taken the wrong medicine and wanted to rebel. Fu Dekong was confused and had no idea why Jin Xuanhuan asked his teacher so much. Jin Qing saw Fu Shanshan's stunned appearance, stomped his feet lightly, stepped on the blue bricks of the main hall, and tied the line with the mountain roots of Pushan. After a while, he became more and more with a dignified expression. He asked, "Do you know that just now, the air fortune of the entire Jizi mountain and the water transport of the Yongjiang River seem to have been led away by your Pushan?" Fu Dekong became more and more at a loss, shook his head and said, "Subordinates really don't know." Jin Qing asked, "You didn't notice anything weird?" Fu Dekong thought for a moment. Just now there was a Taoist priest from a foreign country who claimed to be called Introspection. He came here and asked me for a Taoist book to take back and enshrined. He thought the book I gave was not valuable and instead gave me a Taoist book. There is no book title on the cover, only the inscription. I think about it. I regarded it as the kind of Taoist priest who made a name for himself. I wanted to come to my Pushan side, but out of love, I helped him write a few comments on the Taoist book. It's good to be famous on the mountain. Jin Qing said solemnly, "Where is the book?" Fu Dekong said, "I just threw it into the warehouse." Jin Qing asked, "Fu de Shanshan, or I beg you, quickly bring that Taoist book over and let me have a look?" Fu Dekong was a little embarrassed, and moved the Taoist book back to the main hall again. Jin Qing didn't even dare to open the book casually, he still hung it in the air and looked intently. The cover of this Taoist book of ordinary material had only self-examination. 2 characters, but the character G on the top seems to be written in gold ink, which is like a golden silk thread, and the character save at the bottom seems to be written in green ink. Jin Qing held her breath, put her fingers together, and stroked the words on the cover lightly, like a vulgar man suddenly touching hot coals. Jin Qing quickly retracted his fingers and shook his sleeves vigorously. The Zhongyue Shanjun sneered, "Sure enough, this book is a joke. It's just that the entire Pushan realm and even the Beiwei realm has lost the figure of the Taoist priest." Jin Qing squinted again at the dull-faced Fu de Shanshan, and then put his gaze on the title of the book again and said, "Fu Dekong, try to open the book." Fu Dekong nodded and carefully stretched out his hand to open the book, but the Taoist book remained motionless. Even if Fu Dekong sat on a mountain and used his natal supernatural powers, he still couldn't open the book. Jin Qing suddenly smiled and said, "What a Ji-Ling wooden chicken." The other party deliberately teased him like this. "It is you who admires him the most. The silk thread Ji is Ji and the condensed water transport rights province. It is Ji-Ling. You, Fu Dekong, don't know where the Ji-Ling wooden chicken first came from. Who knows? Then Fu Dashinshin, tell it yourself, who gave you this Taoist book?" Fu Dekong suddenly realized. "Have you really seen Headmaster Lu? No wonder the other party didn't pay incense before. Headmaster Lu really wanted to pay 3 incense sticks to the golden statue in the main hall." Fu Dekong was afraid that the golden body would be bowed down to the other party. Why did Fu Dekong deliberately address Zhangjiao Lu by his first name when he was with Chen Guosher in the capital of Dali? Jin Qing said angrily, "Hurry up, I don't have time to watch your jokes." Fu Dekong said in a low voice, "I beg Shanjun to clear up your confusion." Jin Qing said with a smile, "Hurry up and say a good word to this Taoist book. The other party must still be listening." Fu Dekong hurriedly took 3 steps back and bowed to the Taoist book. "Pushan Fu Dekong, welcome the Taoist book to return to the mountain." Sure enough, this Taoist book fell into Fu Dichong's sleeve on its own. Jin Qing smiled and said, "Teach people to be envious, look greedy." Fu Dekong smiled awkwardly. The Jin Qing shrinking mountains and returning to the temple of the Zishan mountain. Sure enough, the vision of heaven and earth in the Zhongyue Dijia has dissipated. Fu Dekong sighed with emotion, and the friendship between Headmaster Lu and Mr. Chen was really not very good. The mountain raised his sleeves vigorously. The Taoist book presented by Master Lu was really heavy. In the entire mountain hall, only the mountain Fu Dekong himself did not know. Behind the statue there was actually a Taoist priest who had left and returned. He slowly moved forward with the crowded people. The young Taoist priest clenched his fists in front of him. while he swayed while walking, chanting words in his mouth, hoping that the mountain would bless the trail with everything going smoothly and safely. After Lu Qin quietly left Pushun, he went to the side of the boundary stone monument in Jingyang Mountain, and before going to Qingming Xianxia, he also went to the heart of a certain female cultivator in Luzhou, Beiju, and sleepwalked. Lu Qin took the nightmare that was still in the realm of cultivation and put it in his sleeve. Only then did he fly up to the sky and really return to Baiyujing. In Nanhua City, Lu Qin sat in the dojo, raised his arms, straightened the crown above his head with both hands and took a deep breath. Lu Qin didn't even dare to separate out a piece of mind, or the kind of yin and spirit out of his body, but instead started a real journey against the current. In the middle of Tongye continent, Yulindu outside the capital of Yinyan country, on both sides of the ferry, there are high-rise buildings and wealthy private residences on one side, and on the other side are small restaurants that are not very good and cheap. As the night fell, the number of guests on the river bank gradually decreased, the restaurants closed one after another, and the opposite side became more and more brightly lit and full of traffic. A sword immortal in white and an old man in yellow sat opposite each other, ordered some special snacks and ordered barley wine. The latter asked with a smile, "Are the rich people in the world all night owls?" Miyu, who rarely left the ferry, said with a smile, "I'm not from this side and I don't have a lot of money in my pocket. Otherwise I would invite fellow Taoist Nen to drink flower wine on the other side." Nen Taoist smiled and said, "What's the point of drinking flower wine? It's all about drinking money. I admire those poor scholars who went to Beijing to take the exam." "That's just lying." Miyu smiled. "Strange to say, I used to think about women when I was in my hometown, but when I got here I didn't seem to have any ideas. Is it really old? Or is it really like what Chef Xu said? A book with simple language, smooth story and occasionally a few punchlines, just like thunder on the ground. If there are too many pages and pages they are all like flowers, but if you just pile them up blindly, it will be far inferior to the taste of a dish of pickles and porridge. Look at women too." Miyu and Nin Taoist drank this wine until dawn. Of course, the owner of the restaurant was looking at money for the sake of money. After getting a few snow money he went back to sleep. Anyway, even if the two guests were torn down the shop, it was not worth a cent of ferry money. During this period, Taoist Nen also went to the kitchen to be the cook for a time, and cooked a few dishes for me de Jiangxian. In the early morning of this day, Li Huai brought the fox charmer named Wei Taijin with a power fence on his head to the mountain gate of Luopao Mountain. Because Li Huai wants to go to the wild world, he has already taken leave from Shanaya Academy, and the mountain chief has approved it. Mainly, I was thinking about the old blind man who didn't even know his surname or first name. Now he is still on the Shirwanda mountain. He is alone. It's quite uncomfortable. I want to go there to see the old man. So Li Huai was called by Qin Pingan to Luopao Mountain this time, just to say something in person. No matter who he is with or what his relationship is, as long as he is a close person, Li Huai will try to say goodbye to him when he separates from him. There is nothing up and down the mountain, the distance is far and the distance is long, and the length of time is a difference after all. Now the gatekeeper of Luopao Mountain is a young and unfamiliar Taoist priest. Suddenly, a white-haired boy appeared, claiming to be the editor of Luopao Mountain, Lord Yingwen's confidant on the side of the Sword Qi Great Wall, and the #1 general under the command of Lord Qin Shan. Wei Taijin beside Li Huai, she didn't dare to look up at the mountain gate archway. The genus of monsters and monsters, regardless of whether they belong to the wild world or not, it is inevitable that they will feel apprehensive when they hear the title of hidden official. What's more, Wei Taijin was standing at the foot of the Luopao Mountain. Her father, the old fox who used to pretend to be a landman in Baojing Mountain, saw Wei Taijin last time. By collecting the Shanshuadi newspapers and some clues from that year, the old fox followed the vine and found out that the man who almost became his son-in-law back then. The guy, it turns out to be Qin Shanju of the Luobao Mountain in Beipingzi today. The old fox is so angry he beat his chest and his feet, and he was so angry that he was so angry, that surnamed Yang mistaken me. Motherfucker, wait for my realm to rise in the future? When the mountain master, I have to slap him to death. What a marriage, just because this guy is in the middle, just slipped away under the nose, and I blame you. I didn't listen to my father's advice back then. It counted, forget it. Master Qin Shanju, Qin De Jiangxian, such a big man, a small family like us can't afford to climb high, and you are indeed not worthy of it. Oh no, marriage between men and women is not necessarily so many talents and beauties, men and women, which one is the right match? Thinking of this, Wei Taijin had a headache, so she glanced at the scholar beside her through the tool. As soon as I heard that the fox charm was in the nascent soul realm, when the white-haired boy took a pen to record, he was obviously lacking in interest, but at any rate he was in the middle 5 realm, which was slightly better than the upper 5 realm. When I asked Li Huai's realm again after hearing that he was neither a chi trainer nor a martial artist, the white-haired boy suddenly burst into laughter, as if he was lucky to go out a few steps. Of course the white-haired boy recognized Li Huai. Wei Taijin took courage and said timidly, "Master Kong Ho, my son is a sage of the academy." The white-haired boy put away the pen and paper, put his hands on his hips and said with a grin, "I'm a good boy in the middle of the winter, sage, amazing, young and promising." Li Huai could not wait to dig a hole on the spot and drill down. Li Huai quickly changed the subject. "Is Pei Chen back?" The white-haired boy led Li Huai to sit at the table. "No, that little black charcoal surnamed Pei is still busy in Tong Yezhou. Of course, today's Pei Chen is no longer a small black charcoal." The white-haired boy is more depressed about this. "It's not good for everyone to be short melons together." Li Huai asked, "Where's Uncle Zheng?" The white-haired boy sat cross-legged, nibbling on the melon seeds. "I have nothing to do all day long, so I went to chat with the old cook again. It's euphemistically called learning from each other. It's bulging here and there and I can't hear it." With the boy in Xingyi, he watched so many scenes in vain every day, and he was reluctant to lose a few immortals' money. It's just that the family's ugliness cannot be made public, and the white-haired boy has no face to talk about it. Li Huai was born and raised in the small town, and it was actually okay to hear these contents. But he was so ashamed of the fox beside him. Jiang Shangzhen did not go back to Luopao Mountain with him, but went to Changchun Palace first, and then asked Wei Shanjun to help him and dragged him back to Nujiashan Ferry. Only after returning to Luopa Mountain before reaching the old cook's house, he found a slender woman in a snow-white robe standing on the road. Jiang Shangzhen smiled and clasped his fists. "Longevity is the law." Changming nodded and smiled. "I have seen Chief Zhou." Jiang Shangzhen asked, "This is the law of longevity?" Changming said, "I happened to pass by." Jiang Shangzhen nodded. "I don't want to talk to her more. In the lonely mountains of her own family, I am afraid that apart from the mountain owner, everyone is more or less afraid of her." She suddenly smiled and said, "Chief Zhou, I heard 2 sentences you described me. One is on our Luobao Mountain, I am the most favorite long-lived Taoist friend in Zhou, and the second sentence is Palm Sister Lu squinted and smiled and the man's heart trembled. I never thought that in Chief Zhou's heart, I was so flattered that I could have such a beautiful appearance and such a high evaluation. Jiang Shangzhen's scalp was numb, and he knew something was wrong, so he immediately clarified, "Fellow Taoist longevity, it's just 2 jokes on the wine table, you can't take it seriously. Brother Jia has a strict mouth and will not let this kind of thing go out. It must be the Uncle Chen Lingjun who owes his mouth. The route of the flow of wealth in the world is the road of wealth. It seems to be illusory but it is not. In the eyes of the monks on the mountain, this road really exists. Otherwise, why did Shanzhu Chen let one of his own patriarchs sit on the Fengyuan ferry? If it annoys Sister Changming, she only needs to walk to the blessed land of the Cloud Cave. Even if there is Ni Yuanzhang's 3-legged golden toad, with all her strength to help gather fortune, she probably won't be able to stand it. Although Changmin's appearance is not the kind of beauty that is alluring, but to be honest, the kind of femininity on Changmin's sister is really rare, very rare. Jiang Shangzhen has his own set of evaluation methods for beauties in the world, adding and subtracting points for 7 or 8 categories, which is extremely rigorous. For 100 pennies, if you only talk about the beauty of a long-lived Taoist, you can probably have 80 pennies, but if you add her unique charms, it will be at least the level of 95 pennies. However, Jiang Shangzhen knew very well that a woman like the long-lived Taoist friend was destined not to have feelings for anyone. Luo Hua is intentional and ruthless, and the wishful thinking of all men in the world is today's green hills and sunset, which cannot be chased or kept. At this point, Jiang Shangzhen had no choice but to use a trick to keep his dog's head. In his own Luoluo Mountain, Jiang Shangzhen actually used the means of isolating heaven and earth. Do you know if the mountain master knows one thing? Changmin nodded. I know that the young master has long known, but I have to pretend that I don't know in some way. The question and answer on both sides is very convoluted. This involves a very important, and can even be said to be the top 2 top-level secret affairs. View the world. Think of the lotus flower-blessed land as a world with complete and orderly circulation of the avenues. For example, where did the first sword cultivator in the world come from, and why did he come to be? The mountain master may not be able to grasp a clear context, but as long as it is done for Qin Pingan, the Tao will be of great benefit. This is similar to that in Xuandu Guan, when Sun Daochang asked Fatty Yen to think about the question, why is there only sword repair in the world? But this matter outsiders cannot remind Qin Pingan. Don't say it is beating around the bush and you can't even say a word. Otherwise it would be like someone forcibly handing Qin Pingan a bamboo basket and asking him to go to the river to salvage the moon, which is destined to be a waste of time. Therefore Cui Dongshan could only be in a hurry, and he did not dare to give any hints to Mr. Yu so as not to superfluous. Jiang Shangzhen breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "In that case this is the best." In the world of Qingming, Xuanduguan received a letter from Baiyujing from Feijian. The sender was Lu Qin, who had just returned to Qingming world, and the recipient was Bai Yi, who was practicing swordsmanship in Xuandu. Bai also read the secret letter and then went to inform Jun Qian, who is now a guest in the Taoist temple, and said that we will go back to Howran world together, your little junior brother, please go to Luopao mountain. And Lu Qin said in the letter that this time the two of them traveled far away and flew into the sky, and Bai Yujing would not care about it, so there was no need to report. Lu Shilu smiled and asked, "Junior brother just told me to go, what are you doing?" Bai Yujing has chased people away. Do you think it would be more troublesome for you to stay here? Bai Yi said, according to Lu Chen's explanation, it is an exchange with Howran Xianxia. I will return to my hometown, and another Jinxiu named Xiaoma will come over here, and let the other party be a guest of Mingyue Haotsai so that I can talk to that spectator. Shu reminisces about the old days. When I return to the Qingming world, that sword cultivator will return to the Howran world. Bai Ye's sword practice is actually very simple, especially after he entered the Jade Purity realm. In fact, it didn't take long before he became an immortal. There have been countless poems handed down from generation to generation, among which there is a sentence, "The immortal touches my top, and the hair grows." One day before, Bai Yi, who was watching the blue lotus flower in the half-pond, realized something. He just retreated for a while, and with a stick of incense, there was a vision of heaven and earth. Growth and not hair, the top floating fairy. After walking out of the room that was still closed, Bai was already a sword immortal. However, Qi practitioners who have entered the fairyland can change their real appearance, but Bai Yi didn't do this and still has the appearance of a teenager. Lu Shirley glanced at the juvenile tiger hat and asked with a smile, "How do you say it?" Bai also rubbed the hat on his head. "It seems like I'm used to wearing it." Lu Shirlu said, "It was agreed in advance that if you see my husband this time, you are not allowed to show my husband's face in front of me." Inappropriate. I have to give it to White Emperor City in Middle-earth. Two Zheng, who are both monks in the 14th realm, stood side by side in a realm that seemed to be too empty. He once painted a vast and boundless astrological map. In addition, he also imitated a Guangqianjian Zhai in the middle. In the vast world, the great wall of sword Qi, and the wild world, the flying swords of the swordsmen of all dynasties are densely packed and confused. One looks at the celestial phenomenon, and the other looks at the sword map. Master Qin Qinglu alone did not teach swordsmanship to his pioneering disciple. As for the rest of the so-called direct disciples, they lacked aptitude. Like the younger disciple Lu Daochun, it would be meaningless for Qin Qinglu to teach him. Jing Juzhong did not have any grudges about this. If the preacher does not preach this way, is it possible that the disciple will not be able to teach himself? In the world of Qingming, a small Taoist temple located in a remote place. Because there are relatives, one old and one young, depend on each other in this Taoist temple. In the early years they relied on money to open the way and finally got the identity of a resident Taoist priest, but there was no genealogy. Regarding the courtyard as well as the morning bell and the evening drum, the old man did it for the young man. The old man, who was called Changbo by the young man, nags a lot, and the young man's surname Qin is just a deaf ear. In the dark, reading at night, the light was dim, an old man named Changgung was explaining in detail to the young man named Qin Song what is meant by a gentleman who respects his own, and does not admire his presence in the sky, is the sun. And to also. After hearing Uncle Chang's explanation, the young man couldn't help but ask, "Uncle Chang, is this the knowledge of Confucianism? You teach me this without being taboo?" The old man nodded, picked up a peanut from the plate, put it into his mouth and chewed it carefully. The lamp on the table was slowly burning. As for whether or not to commit taboos, only you and I know, and no one knows when you go out. What does it matter? Qin Song said with a smile, "Just a scholar? Not much in fame." Changbo squinted and smiled. "Who said no?" Qin Song asked curiously, "Uncle Chang, there are no outsiders, let me know. Do you know him? Are they all those poor scholars?" Changbo did not answer this question, but just asked the young man to repeat the meaning of that sentence. Changbo once said, "A chariot and reel, and it's a matter of time and history, and it will be spent in the sound of books." Then the young man was full of smiles and began to shake his head, What is meant by a gentleman who respects those who belong to himself, but does not admire those who belong to the heavens? He is progressing by the day, and listen to me carefully. The old man pretended to be angry and glared, I didn't stand during the day and I didn't sit at night. How many times have I said it? I'm sitting upright. The young man is not afraid of this Uncle Chong. In the eyes of the old man, every time he looks at himself, it is the kind of doting and gratification that his parents treat the younger generation, or the kind of younger generation who is very promising. Probably this is a day with nothing to do, relatives sitting idle, and the lights are lovely. Sword of Coming Chapter 1181. Chapter 1181. It turned out to be the protector Chao Gingxin came to a house in a secluded alley in the capital, took out a key, opened the courtyard door, and entered the courtyard 2 times. Just faster. This is the first time that Chao Gingxin has stepped into the courtyard. He has been denied entry a few times before, because someone instructed the then Du Zhao Chao in a secret letter that he will come here in the future when someone succeeds as the national teacher of Dali. While opening the courtyard, a meeting was held, but what was being discussed and who was called was not explained in the letter. The other party just gave Chao Gingxin a title that did not receive royal salaries and was not included in the official records of the court. The small water well, Chao Gingxin squatted at the wellhead and looked inside for a while. It was dark, it didn't look like there was a corpse, and it didn't look like the entrance to a certain land dragon palace. Then he threw a stone in and made a thud. Fortunately, he could draw water and fetch water. Chao Gingxin went to the utility room to get a broom and dustpan, and began to clean the courtyard. After Chao Gingxin was busy with all this, he sat at the wellhead, took off the small purple gourd jug with a bright pulp on his waist, pulled off the wine stopper, and raised his head to drink a sip of the Changchun wine bestowed by the palace. There is a pair of spring festival couplets pasted at the entrance of the main house, but as the years go by, the wind, rain and the scorching sun have exposed them year after year. First half. There is no in the next pen and people follow what they say. Heaven will die in gentleness, and the manifesto of the Tao is in me, and it is beneficial to open the book, and gentleness is here. Chao Gingxin drank about 3 or 2 wines, but did not think about how to complete the content of the couplet, so he gave up angrily. According to the cumbersome method on the letter, pouring spiritual energy into the jade tablet is like writing the word, earthly branch, in different stroke sequences. After a while, 2 groups of people came to the small courtyard one after another. Chao Gung looked calm. This was what he had thought about before he was about to call someone. He had to pretend to be a little immortal on the mountain. When he found that Zhou Haichao was among them, he looked a little unnatural just because his uncle Chao Ping had called Chao Gingxin to the study before going to the Sunfall Ferry in the wild world. One of the things was that let the eldest Chao Gingxin marry his biological son. If he waits for Chao Ping to return to Dali, he still does not give a word. I believe that Chao Ping will definitely pull out the jade belt around his waist and let Chao Shilang eat a full meal similar to fried pork with bamboo whips. At that time Chao Gingxin took this great female master as a shield, and never thought that Chao Ping would take it seriously. There are no officials in the hospital. So when Chao Gingxin saw the Prince Song Su, he didn't get up to say hello. Yuan Huajing asked, Chao Gingxin, how do you own this jade card? Because according to the rules of the Earth Branch, seeing this jade card is like seeing Cui Yu. Yu Yu smiled and said, it's just been passed and it will be handed over to Mr. Chen soon. Is this a return to the original owner? Chao Gingxin smiled and said, that's not necessarily true. But a servant of the Ministry of Personnel can take care of the 12 of you. You seem to have lost a bit. There are a lot of talents and the mysterious masters in the yard are immortal. A descendant of the Yuan clan of Shangzhou Kingdom, Yuan Huajing Yuanyingjing sword cultivator. Song Su, the Prince of Dali, was a swordsman in the Jindanjing realm. Han Zhoujin, a female formation master from Xingao sect's Qingtan blessed land. Yu Yu, a military cultivator from the Yu clan of Shangzhou Kingdom. Capital Road Records, Zhurong Rinshi, Guling Translation Bureau novice, after the awakening. Sui Lin, a Qi trainer from the Yinyang family. Confucian scholar Lu Hui. Ghost repair Change Yan. A young man from a strange origin, Go Siyuan. Hard work. Zhou Haijing, the only pure warrior, a seaside fisherman and a mountain master. Chao Gingxin only knew more than half of the 12 earthly branches of Dali. After a while, a blue shirt appeared in the alley with his fingers bent, he knocked gently on the courtyard door, and then led Xiao Mo, crossed the threshold into the courtyard, and Xiao Mo gently closed the courtyard door. Chao Gingxin got up and said with a smile, Mr. Chen, I didn't expect us to meet again so soon. Chen Pingan shook his sleeves, the smell of alcohol drifted away in the wind and said with a smile, I didn't show courtesy to xianxia, I just took Lu Su and the others to the Changpu River restaurant, and I never thought of reporting the name of xianxia there. Not only do not give a discount but also double the amount of drinking. They won't let us go. I said it's okay to not keep accounts. A booze debt is one. Even Yuan Huajing couldn't help but glance at Chao Gingxin. Lu Hui and Kushu had suffered a lot on Mr. Chen's side, and they almost didn't give Chao Shirlang a thumbs up. This daring Chao Shirlang really wants to die. You said that it's not good for you to cheat, and dare to cheat this Mr. Chin? As far as Lu Hui is concerned, Qin Pinggan's flower blossom, which resembles both boxing and swordsmanship, was instantly pierced by dozens of long swords. There is also a female ghost who changed her appearance. At that time, I didn't see how that Qin Pinggan pities xianxia, and chopped it up on the spot with a sword move, Pinyue, said to be self-created. Only Zhou Haichao, who entered the industry late, didn't know the seriousness of the benefits for the time being, and she didn't know the consequences of provoking Qin Pinggan. So she noticed that the atmosphere in the hospital was not right, so she was more curious. The geniuses among these geniuses are not very arrogant on my side. Why is seeing Qin Pinggan like a mouse seeing a cat today? As for? Chao Gingxin said with embarrassment, is retribution coming so quickly? Qin Pinggan explained to them, Xiao Mo said that you suddenly gathered in one place and I was a little curious. Since it was Shirlang Chao who called you here, I have nothing to do with me. Chao Gingxin hurriedly said, it's related, Mr. Qin doesn't want to stay out of it, Chui Guosher has something to say, let me speak publicly in front of both of you. Go Siuan is a lively person, so he went to the house and moved a bench over, wanting to give Mr. Qin a place to sit. As a result, he was snatched by Gai Yen and placed beside Qin Pinggan. Just relying on Mr. Chen's good words in the military yamen, he changed the innkeeper to Yen, not to mention moving a bench. As long as Mr. Chen is willing, she can sit on her. When she was putting down the bench, she saw the young man in the yellow hat and blue shoes greet her with a smile, and she smiled back. Gai Yen only knew that he was Mr. Chen's personal squire, who once entered the palace together to meet the Queen Mother. Qin Pinggan and Gai Yen thanked him, sat on the bench and said with a smile, tell me about it, I'll listen. Chao Gingxin said, just 2 sentences, 1 sentence is for Yuan Jianxian and the others. Those who have waste cards in the courtyard today will be under my jurisdiction in the future, not under the deployment of the new national teacher of Dali, but the new national teacher can make suggestions, that's all. The second sentence was addressed to Mr. Qin. Actually, Chui Guoshi's letter didn't mention his name. I'll repeat it again. I'll say what I wrote in the letter, you're not black enough and you're not ruthless enough. This group of people can't be used well at all, just like a sword in the sheath, it will only wear away the sword's wool for a long time, and they will only lose their vitality, and they will be reduced to tasteless and unfortunate useless ribs. Qin Pinggan nodded, wrapped his arms around his sleeves and smiled, and then asked, Brother Chui thinks I can't do it, but you can do it? Chao Gung's heart choked for a while. This question is not easy to answer. Yu Yes' eyes were shining brightly and she said in her heart, come here, bet. I bet that Mr. Chen will cut Chao Gingxin, at least hand out a sword or reward a punch. Gai Yen immediately echoed, this time, let's stop gambling and bet that the Changchun Palace wine is ready. Qin Pinggan stretched out his hand, bring that letter over and have a look. Before going to Changpu River for a drink, of course I trusted Chao Duzhao, who was an official in my hometown and was well known. It's hard to say now. Chao Gingxin said helplessly, at the end of the letter, Chui Guosher specifically reminded me that it will be destroyed after reading it. It really doesn't give Mr. Qin any evidence. Qin Pinggan asked, then change to a simpler way of proof. How can you prove that your heart is more ruthless? Chao Gingxin glanced at the 12 earthly branches, then looked at the man in the blue shirt and long coat sitting on the bench, took off the wine gourd, mentioned it and said with a smile, before speaking the truth, Mr. Qin, allow me to drink some wine to strengthen my courage? Qin Pinggan picked up his cyan long coat, changed to a sitting position with his legs crossed, stretched out his palm and said with a smile, you can do whatever you want. Chao Gingxin took a sip of wine, lowered his head, raised the back of his hand and wiped the corners of his mouth, raised his head, squinted his eyes and smiled. If I had entered this yard earlier, Yuan Huajing, the 12 of them, would be in Treasure Ping Continent now. Some capitals to the south and the entrance of the Patriarch Hall, the head of the emperor of a certain country, and the corpse of the head of a certain mountain have been doubled, and there are 24 in total. Before returning to Dali, leave a reminder to the Imperial Court and the Immortal Mansion. If you see any bad news or obituary mentioning these accidents in any Shanshuodi newspaper, or you may speculate or frame grievances. Put the blame on a certain dynasty in the north, and in return, the dragon chair in their imperial court and the chair of the head of the mountain will always be empty, and there will be no one to sit on. When Chao Jingxin's words were settled, the courtyard became silent. Chao Gingxin glanced at a pair of plywood shoes on the bench, one on the ground and the other in the air. It is easy to hunt righteousness with unrighteousness, and it is difficult to hunt unrighteousness with righteousness. After Chao Gingxin finished saying this, he took another sip of wine, making a thud and don't like the gourd. Yu Yu opened her mouth wide, and she clenched a fist in one hand and waved it vigorously. Chao Jingxin's penultimate sentence really touched her heart. Qin Pingan nodded. Aside from isolated cases, it's all the same. Chao Gingxin sighed as if he never expected such an answer. It makes sense, but it doesn't make sense at all. Qin Pingan stood up and asked with a smile, Chao Gingxin, in the future you will act in the same vein? Do I have the right to know in advance and the right to veto? Chao Gung said in his heart, Shui Guosher didn't say this in the letter. Qin Pingan said, that's it. Chao Gung was speechless and had to sigh heavily. He suddenly asked, Mr. Qin really took his friends to the Changpu River? Qin Pingan smiled and said, fortunately I came here after drinking in courage. If you talk about you, I won't stay here to get in the way. Qin Pingan took the squire out of the yard and gradually walked out of the alley. Chao Gingxin, who listened to the footsteps, was sure that they were far away, so he sat down on the wellhead, pulled off his collar and fanned the wind, and started drinking and beating himself up. Go Xiuan walked over to the bench and wanted to move back to the original position, but was stopped by Gai Yen. Go Xiuan looked puzzled, and Gai Yen said confidently that she was going to move to the inn to be the treasurer of the town store. Yu Yu sat on the steps outside the main house door and praised, Chao double, yes, very good. Yu Yu was young and her family was not low. She had long heard of Chao Gingxin, Yuan Jingding and Lu Sunmai's legendary deeds that belonged to the previous generation in Ichi Lane and Cheer Street, where wealthy and aristocratic families gathered. The younger generation like Zhao Duanming, all know that Chao Gingxin used to make a fortune by selling pornographic novels and pictures. When Chao Gingxin went to the local government, the old people were relieved and this scourge finally passed. Chao Gingxin said helplessly, this nickname is not very pleasant. Yu Yu smiled and said, it sounds better than Chao Thief. It turned out that among the two generations who cared about Qixiang and Cheer Street, they were used to calling Chao Gingxin a Chao Thief. Zhou Haichao leaned against the doorpost of a wing with his arms around his chest, and asked with a smile, what Chao Shilang just said was the truth? Chao Gingxin glanced at the woman's arm, but didn't dare to look at it anymore and said with a wry smile, there are fake wines in the wine, not to mention the words spoken. Song Su said, your approach has too many sequelae. No matter how secretive we are, today's Xuanhu Academy is not a fool. Chao Gingxin smiled, it's just a fool. Qin Guoshi sighed, I have to say, I don't believe it myself. What do you believe? Zhou Haichao joked, Chao Gingxin, you are a servant, how can you talk to His Royal Highness? Chao Gingxin smiled and dismissed it, but the dog couldn't stop eating shit, and took the opportunity to take another look at the round scenery on her side. Last time he took Zhao Duanming to the roof to watch the arena competition, but it was too far away to see it clearly. Yuan Huajing asked, what other orders do Shilang Chao have? Chao Gingxin smiled and said, let's go back to our homes and we will meet again if we have something to do. Since there is nothing to do today, then we will go home. Gai Yen and a group of people returned to the inn, and each practiced sword or chi in a snail shell dojo. Following Mr. Chen's suggestion, Gai Yen took the initiative to chat with Zhou Haichao about the idea of doing business in partnership and making the inn business bigger together. Zhou Haichao's eyes lit up, but he didn't say whether it was okay or not. He directly talked to Gayan about how to split the bill. She opened her mouth wide and wanted to split the bill with Gayan 55. If I had heard that Zhou Haichao was so unprofessional before, Gayan would have let her get out of the way. Today, Gayan felt confident and didn't panic at all, so he talked about some of his experiences, and told Zhou Haichao what the inn would be next. How to operate a book of business. Zhou Haichao was surprised to hear that, if he changed his face to this fool, could he have been overtaken by a ghost? No, she's a ghost herself. That change Yen is, suddenly enlightened like a god. It's almost like asking boxing in the arena. Once the momentum is weak, it will be difficult to bargain. Zhou Haichao has to take a step back and she and Gayan Sanchi Kai. Then there was a young female nun who had just been removed from the door, and came to discuss the matter with the shopkeeper, and said that a few distinguished guests from other towns in Beiju Luzhou, a juvenile figure, asked if she could go directly to the inn. By the two houses near the water here, Luzhou Moon, and Kayunjian, as long as the inn nods and sells these 2 houses to them, they guarantee that they can stay at most 1 month within a year, and the remaining 11 months or longer the inn can be open to the outside world. As for other guests staying at the top, the receipt is correct and all the income goes to the inn. Gai Yin was stunned for a moment. Have you met such a big idiot who has so much money that he has nowhere to spend? Zhou Haijing asked, what are their identities? The young female cultivator said, Yuan Xin, Fan Yu, Lu Wooding in the Sanlang Temple. The mule, the horse, the river and the Liuxiu. Zhou Haijing grinned and said, good guy, the Yuan family of the Sanlang Temple, and the Luoma Heliu clan are all the wealthiest people in their Beiju Luzhou rank. They must double the original price and then double it again. However, Gai Yin said to the young female nun, just tell the steward and sell it to them at the cost price. Zhou Haijing said angrily, Gaian, if you have money but don't make money, your brain is flooded? Gai Yin said, Lu Su has been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and Fan Yu has been to the battlefield of our Dali accompanying capital. Zhou Haijing stared straight at Gai Yin. Gai Yin said, look at what I do, just break up with you, go back to your own house, and I will only earn my little money from now on. However, Zhou Haijing smiled suddenly, it's alright, you are the shopkeeper and just the second shopkeeper, you have the final say. I used to think you were stupid so I didn't know how to make money. Gai Yin smiled and asked, what about now? Zhou Haijing said, it's really stupid. Gai Yin's eyebrows stood upright, say it again. Zhou Haijing asked the female nun to chat with the inn steward, then winked at Gai Yin and said with a smile, how about that bench that was moved from the small courtyard, how about you lend me a seat? Wen Yun and Xianxia. Gai Yin glared and said, you mother-in-law, you are so serious. Zhou Haijing smiled and said, who was at the door of the house when he saw Mr. Qin? He was like a tiger and a sheep, and he tried his best to get on the other side. Gai Yin blushed and said, isn't that a joke with Mr. Qin? Zhou Haijing lowered his voice and said, I think Qin Pingan is still a young child. Gai Yin waved her sleeves and closed the door, it's not good to have a good chat. Leaving that alley, Qin Pingan took Xiaomo to stroll around the capital. Xiaomo said, Chief Zhou asked Wei Shanjun to help and has returned to Luopao Mountain. In examining the ripples of the morale machine of Qi training and the flow of spiritual Qi in the world, Xiaomo is actually better than Baijing. It is precisely because of this housekeeping skill that he and Baijing will only have 3 sword fights 10,000 years ago, otherwise not to mention being forced to lead the sword in 3 battles, 30 battles are possible. Qin Pingan asked with a smile, is it at the Changchun Palace where dumplings were made? Chief Zhou, because of his face, had to scold him or beat him and ran away? I remember the first time I visited Luzhou in Beiju, I heard that Jianghu was notorious for many deeds there. For example, there is a mountaintop that only provokes 1 female cultivator, and a Jianghu sect only deceives 1 female hero. What a stinky bug. If Jiang Shangzhen didn't use a pseudonym as the chief worshipper, Qin Pingan could not imagine the reputation of Luopao Mountain on Baoping, Tongya and Baijilu Mountains. Xiaomo smiled, I don't know the specific inside story. He still respects Chief Zhou very much. When the sun's downfall has not yet been revealed, Chief Zhou is always spending money there, not icing on the cake but giving help in the snow. It is better to give a piece of money in difficult times than a piece of gold. What's more, at that time, Chief Zhou's money was Guy's money. So Xiaomo felt that unless the son made a decision, who would dare to compete with Chief Zhou in the future, Xiaomo was the first to refuse. Before Xiego returned from the fire temple, Xiaomo wondered, I don't know if Xiego and that Aunt Feng have anything to talk about. I remember that they had a normal relationship before. Qin Pingan smiled and said, women and women talking about men, there are no taboos. Men mention women and say some dirty words. Compared with them, it is like a child playing a house. Xiaomo sincerely praised, young master even understands this. Qin Pingan hurriedly shook his head and clarified, of course I don't understand, I heard what the old cook told Chief Zhou and me de Jiangxian, they are the top experts, and I will leave if I hear it occasionally. Qin Pingan turned to his heartfelt words and asked, Xiaomo, I really thought about it, I want to join the genealogy of the ancestors of Luopao Mountain and become a named worshipper of Jisifeng? Xiaomo asked with a smile, young master shouldn't be Xiego, right? Qin Pingan said, Xiego has always been just Baijing, a genealogical identity of a mighty world, she can't be restrained at all, her identity and Taoism are the same. She wants to be the second seat of worship, just like a joke, of course we Luopao Mountain really needs an extra Ascension Realm pure sword repairer. To be precise, Howren World can keep Xiego, and the Wild World can go to 1 less Baijing. I know this and Xiego also knows it. Du Ming, just because you are here, I won't break it with her. Xiaomo asked suspiciously, young master can't trust me? Qin Pingan laughed angrily. Why, Mr. Amo only speaks at critical moments, isn't it a waste of his previous achievements? Xiaomo laughed dumbly. It doesn't matter to me whether you want to join the Jianghu genealogy of the Ancestral Master Hall or not. In the end, Ji Sifeng will discuss matters whether there is a record or not, you are all a little street. Qin Pingan said, but for you more or less, it is a layer of restraint. There happened to be a child nearby who released paper kites, and Qin Pingan pointed to the paper kites in the sky in the distance. You are pure sword cultivators, the sky is high and the earth is wide, and you should be free and unfettered. Then every kind of nostalgia, hatred, concern, nostalgia, and remembrance of ours is like a thread of paper kite, and it will be remembered with a gentle pull. When thoughts come together, the mind of the Tao ripples like water. It's easy to stop the thoughts, but it's hard to stop them. Xiaomo thought about it carefully. I was under a tree and listened to the Buddha and an anonymous man talking about the Dharma. The latter said that others were purgatory in the world, but the Buddha said that a lotus flower opened in the world because of this. Qin Pingan was speechless for a long time. I forgot who said it, making mistakes and forgetting is a kind of beauty, a kind of tenderness with compassion, and it belongs to extrajudicial grace. Xiaomo said softly, young master? Qin Pingan smiled and said helplessly, you have moved out of the Buddha, what else can I say? Xiego appeared in front of the road and handed them a few bucket cakes wrapped in oil paper. Delicious. Qin Pingan took the bucket of cake and asked, are you giving me any money? Xiego snorted and patted his mink hat. Forget it. She also thought that in the boundary of our Dali capital, if you drink and eat and report the name of the mountain master or the national teacher, you don't need to pay. Misunderstood, huh? She used to be in Beiju Luzhou before. She was not like this. She went to the mountains to collect herbs, and set up a street stall in the mountain market. Xiego immediately turned around and ran away. On the side of the bucket cake stand, which has a very good business, the man scolded and looked at an honest little girl. How could she be a liar? The sable-capped girl touched a small piece of silver from her sleeve, and the man took it. He immediately smiled and hurriedly said that the guest official is welcome to come again. Back at Qin Pingan and the others, Xiego nibbled at the only piece of dried plum, vegetable and meat bucket cake left in his hand and said vaguely, Shanju, Aunt Feng asked you to go to Baihua Blessed Land earlier, and if you don't go, she won't need your help. It's time to take it back. Qin Pingan heard what Aunt Feng meant and said, I see, I must go early. Anyway, as long as it's not her heartfelt words, Aunt Feng can definitely hear it. Xiego said, and Aunt Feng asked me to report the good news to the mountain owner. There is no objection to the discussion about the mountain owner becoming a Confucian gentleman at the Confucian temple. Qin Pingan was a little strange. No matter how bold Aunt Feng was, she couldn't eavesdrop on the discussions of the Zhongtu Confucian temple. Having said that, Xiego stretched out his hand. Qin Pingan took out a piece of silver that he carried with him and placed it on the palm of the sable-capped girl. Xiaomo looked bewildered. Xiego grinned and said, a lot of the novels of talented and beautiful women have already been written. The scholars who are rushing to the capital, who have passed the Jinshi examination, and those who come to the door to announce the good news, are rewarded with money. Xiaomo was a little helpless. You really have the face to accept, the sun really gives. Xiego got the money and smiled brightly. Aunt Feng just said that it was Mao Sai from the Book of Rites Academy, and he disliked Fijian slow message delivery, so after the discussion was over and he walked out of the Confucian temple, Mao Sai shouted, her divine name, ask her to help report the letter. Qin Pingan's eyes lit up. Xiego laughed and helped to express the thoughts of the owner of the mountain. It's the only new way of making money in the world. Qin Pingan sighed, nonsense, how dare you bother Aunt Feng. In fact, Xiaomo feels more and more that Xiego is in Luopao Mountain. With or without him, Xiaomo is the same. She is very much like the locals and she lives happily every day. Xiego said in a low voice, Xiaomo, Aunt Feng said, His Majesty the Emperor took a jar of Changchun Palace wine and fished Chao Shirlang to go to the Banzhong on duty, just like Luopa Mountain took you to fish me. In fact, at the Huoshan Temple's grape trellis she chatted with Aunt Feng, but it was more exciting than that. It was because they inadvertently overheard Xiaomo's chat with the owner of the mountain, and Aunt Feng gave her this for nothing. Way to go. Xiaomo asked, aren't you angry when you heard it? Xiego tilted his sable hat. Why are you angry? I think it's a good word. Changchun Palace Fairy Brew is a good wine that everyone likes. It's so good that after drinking it the wine jar will be kept. Qin Pingan smiled and said, I'm still here, you're almost there. Xiego grinned and said, Aunt Feng also said that Mao Sai said that the Confucian temple has even finalized the gift for you. Qin Pingan asked curiously, which sentence is it? Confucian disciples, as long as they become sages or gentlemen of the academy, can receive a gift from the academy mountain chief or a sage to accompany the sages. If you are serving as an academy sacrificial wine, a minister of industry, or a mountain leader of the Confucian 72 Academy, you will be able to receive the words of Lixing, Yaxing and Wenxing. If you are the leader of the Confucian temple with the first and third deputy, it is said that the most holy teacher personally cut and deleted a sentence of beautiful meaning from a certain book. Xiego looked playful, glanced at Shanju Qin and asked, the Shanju is so good at guessing his mind, do you need me to tell me? Qin Pingan smiled and said, why ask the question when you know it? Xiaomo was confused. Xiego nodded and said, Mao Sai explained it together. It seems that Master Wenxing read a sentence from a certain book on the other side of the book, because there is a red pen next to the sentence in the book. Qin Pingan nodded, already guessing the answer. Sure enough, what Xiego said was exactly as Qin Pingan expected. His heart moved slightly and then he thought about it, but Qin Pingan broke up the ripples in his heart. Qin Pingan changed the subject and said to them in his heart, Xiaomo, I have discussed with Zhang Jiao and he will help me pass a message to Senior Brother Jun Qian. Senior Brother Jun Qian will rush back to Howran World soon. I have already written a letter. A letter sent to the Confucian Temple, to let you take a trip to the bright moon in the Qingming world so that you can reminisce with the old master. You can stay there for a while, don't rush back to Luopao Mountain, I'm going to retreat soon anyway. Xiego asked tentatively, Mountain Master, can I accompany Xiaomo? Qin Pingan smiled and said, I wrote it in the letter, but it is hard to say whether it will be rejected by the Confucian Temple. Xiaomo said, Xiego, you'd better stay in the mountains, otherwise I won't feel relieved to leave. When I'm not with you, you have to help protect the customs. He and the cave owner of Bixiao Cave in Luobaotan are indeed close friends who regard each other as confidants. Just as Qin Pingan was about to speak, Xiego had already stopped abruptly, straightened his chest like his own right guardian and said solemnly, if there is a slight misunderstanding, bring your head up and see Xiaomo. Xiaomo laughed softly and said, everything is fine. The young master will definitely be able to break through the situation smoothly, you just need to accompany the millet and eat melon seeds. Xiego just wanted to speak. Qin Pingan said, Miss Xie, when you hear this kind of heartwarming words that are better than love words, can't you squeeze out a few tears? You two just care about me and me all the way when I, the mountain master, don't exist, right? I can't disgust you. Xiego sighed and said understandingly, it seems that the mountain master wants to be the mountain master's wife. Xiaomo smiled and nodded, rarely echoing Xiego once. It's human nature, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Shut up. Qin Pingan, who was walking among them, seemed to be furious, stretched out his arms and put his arms around Xiaomo's neck, and held down the sable hat on Xiego's head with one hand. In this picture, seeing Aunt Feng under the grape trellis in the fire temple, I just felt it was an eye-opener. On the road, Xiaomo smiled all over, Xiego pursed his lips and Qin Pingan was very calm, just like a teenager. Aunt Feng, who was sitting on top of Sherdang, closed the book. She envied them. No matter who it is, it will be the first to enter the 14 realms. The other two, no matter where or in the world, if there is a difficulty to overcome, it must be Jianghu who will arrive first. After a while, Xianxia will arrive later. Qin Pingan did not ask Wei Shanjun to help, but chose to take a ferry back to Nujiadu. After all, Wei Shanjun must be busy holding a night banquet right now. In the evening, Qin Pingan took Xiaomo and sat on the roof of the ferry to drink together. Xiego went to buy a few snacks and sat beside Xiaomo. She complained a lot and the price was too embarrassing. Xiego was the most heroic in drinking, but he was not good at persuading him to drink. She quickly fell back and said that she couldn't drink anymore, she would have to drink anymore. She laughed and looked at Xiaomo. The bright moon is bright and reunited, and the moonlight shines long and far away from people. The clouds overshadowed the moon, hazy. Xiaoma picked up a peanut, chewed it carefully and asked in his heart, young master has often forgotten something recently, and he only remembered it after talking to someone. Is it to prepare for retreat? Qin Pingan smiled and nodded. Thoughts give rise to thoughts and hair grows like 100 flowers all the way. It's hard, but it's hard to think about it. You can ask me any question, such as what we saw and heard in the capital of Dali. Xiaomo smiled and asked, Young master, do you still remember that gift? Heart Lake is like fishing. Hook bait is the word for gift. A catch is like a fish. Qin Pingan remembered a long list of memories about this sentence. Qin Pingan smiled and nodded. This gift from the Confucian temple comes from the Tianluan, written by my husband. It is the saying that the gentleman respects those who belong to himself, but does not admire those who belong to heaven. But Qin Pingan soon forgot, he really forgot. Qin Pingan shook his head without thinking much. Xiaomo didn't continue to say anything. He raised his glass and Qin Pingan gently bumped against it and said with a smile, when it comes to drinking, a glass is not as good as a bowl. The clouds on the horizon are brighter than the moon. Qin Pingan said in his heart. The self with a pair of golden eyes, he is above those gates called forgetting, jumping up and down like a child playing a game of jumping squares. Inside a small Taoist temple in the Qingming world. Qin Song, it turned out to be me, Qin Pingan. Uncle Chong, it turns out it's you, big brother. Sword of Coming Chapter 1182. Chapter 1182. A lonely city among colorful clouds, the mountain gate of Luapa Mountain. A burly man with a sword-backed boy wearing a tiger hat on his head, descended from the sky together. Jun Qian smiled and said, "It's here." Bai Yi also glanced at the trends and knots of Luopao Mountain stretches of peaks, nodded and said, "Feng Shui is good." Jun Qian said, "The atmosphere is better." Xianwei changed the book in his hand, got up quickly and asked, "Who are the two distinguished guests?" Jun Qian cupped her fists and said, "My name is Lu Shilu, and am your senior brother Jun Qian. This is my friend Bai Yi." Xianwei was startled again and then held back his laughter, his face sullen, almost unable to hold back. He had an idea and hurriedly made a bow, bowed his head and said, "The year of the Taoist priest, the Taoist named Xianwei, thanks to the love of the mountain master. Now he is the gatekeeper of Luopao Mountain, and Xiaodao has met Lu Xianxia and Bai Jianxian here. The first time I was startled, I heard that the other party turned out to be this senior brother Jun Qian of Chen Shanzhu, and then I was shocked when I heard that Bai Yi just looked at the other party's appearance and attire." Aware of the other party's hairpin, Jun Qian was actually taken aback. "Little junior brother, who can abduct such a playful and lovely millet grain, how can you still bring this? Taoist priest?" Thousands of years ago, the two sides had met each other a lot, so it could be considered that they didn't know each other. At that time, Jun Qian belonged to going to visit. Of course, she never played. Fortunately, the first Taoist priest in the world had a good temper and didn't care about anything. Xianwei straightened his waist and raised his head, wondering in his heart, why didn't the white-haired boy show up immediately? After serving as the music editor in the past, as long as a guest came to the door, the white-haired boy was guaranteed to be there at the first time. Why did he desert today? Jun Qian asked with a smile, "Master Xianwei, where are our millets?" Wei Xian replied with a smile, "Today's morning class on the mountain patrol has ended. Recently I like to go to Xuanhu Mountain to patrol. Most of the time I went there." Jun Qian snorted, "Little junior brother seems to have a lot of big people coming to this mountain recently." Xianwei thought about it for a while and still said something to the handsome young man, "Bai Jianxian, the name is good." Bai also asked, "How?" Xianwei was a little embarrassed. "What should I say?" Originally it was a polite remark, "What do you want Xiaodao to say?" The scene was a little stiff, but unfortunately Jiao Lao Shenxian, who never knew what the cold scene was in the world, was not there. Jun Qian explained with a smile, "Xianwei Daoist, he is Bai Yi." Xianwei felt helpless. The teenagers all claimed to be Bai Yi and he didn't call him anything. Jun Qian said, "There is an unwritten rule that you should drink a cup of tea before climbing a mountain. How do you say it?" Bai Yi said, "Then do as the locals do." Jun Qian took Bai Yi to the table and sat down. In fact, Jun Qian just wanted to be here, drinking a cup of melon seeds while drinking tea, so she had to wait for the little girl who was the right protector of Luopao Mountain for her younger brother. As for what his friend Bai thinks, it doesn't matter anyway. A little girl in black seemed to have received a message and hurriedly climbed the mountain from the back mountain, then passed the top of Jilling Peak and flew all the way down the mountain. "Senior brother Zhua of the Good Man Mountain Master, I have seen it for a long time. The rumors from the outside world are all deceptive. How can I have a bad temper? It's a sword fairy with a big table. That Mr. Jun Qian is equally amazing, so it will be more friendly. There is also a pair of fists with big bowls, just like the book says, the heroes go all over the world and their fists are invincible all over the world. Luopao Mountain's right protector, after all, is a Qi trainer, and he ran with sweat all over his head." Behind the little girl in black, followed by a boy with white hair. Without the grains of millet standing in the way, The editorial officer really didn't dare to show up today. It was the white-haired boy who carried the millet to the foot of the back mountain, but the millet said to put it down, and insisted on running all the way to the gate of the front mountain. The white-haired boy had no choice but to run like the wheel of a car on two legs with a grain of millet. The millet ran faster and faster, past the mountain gate archway, stood still and said with a grin, "Mr. Junqian, it's coming." Junqian had already stood up and said with a smile, "Xiaoli, I'll keep you waiting." Junqian glanced at Bai Yi, who felt helpless and had to stand up. Millet Grain looked at the young man wearing a tiger hat. His face was strained, and his two pale yellow brows were wrinkled. Although the little girl was actually holding back her laughter, to outsiders, it might be more like she was sulking. Bai also seemed to find it interesting and said with a smile, "If you want to laugh, just laugh." Millet scratched her face, then shook her head vigorously like a rattle. It is rare for the white-haired boy to be so restrained, and he said timidly, "Mr. Junqian and this Bai. Immortal Master, I am the editor of the genealogy. According to the rules of our mountain, record a name?" Bai Yi said, "My name is Bai Yi, a native of Haoran Middle-earth Shenzhou, and now I practice in King Mingxian Xiangxuandu Temple." Millet snorted. She secretly gave a thumbs up to Mr. Junqian. When Xianhui heard the words, his body crooked, he fell directly from the bamboo chair to the ground, accidentally dropped the book from his sleeve, and kicked him towards Brother Daifeng's house with lightning speed. Yimo felt so disrespectful to the book, so he tiptoed over there, turned his back to the table, picked up the book, sighed, patted it lightly and put it in his sleeve. He took out a sage book from the other sleeve, then turned around, pretended to hold it in his hand, and sat down on the bamboo chair again to start reading. The white-haired boy recorded the two visitors in the book and they slipped away. Sitting at the table, there is already tea on the table to entertain guests. Daoist Xianhui is very good at handling people and things, and there is no leakage. The millet looked at Mr. Junqian, and Lu Shirlu looked at the millet. "Will it be a bit shabby?" "Just don't worry, of course not." A large handful of melon seeds from the sleeves of millet grains were piled up on Bai Yi's side, and a large handful was also brought to Mr. Junqian. Then the little girl was a little embarrassed and wanted to open her beloved cotton satchel. Bai Yi smiled and gave half of the seeds to the little girl in black. Although Wei Bo wondered why Zhu Lian and Jiang Shangzhen didn't show up at the mountain gate immediately, he still rushed over to the Luapa mountain table. Wei Bo bowed and said, "Wei Bo, the little of Piyun Mountain, has met Mr. Lu, Mr. Bai." Junqian stood up and bowed to the Wei Shanjun. Bai also looked indifferent, just nodded in greeting. If he was willing to pay attention to this kind of red tape, Bai Yi would not have chosen the dojo on the island that was solitary overseas. Wei Bo asked, "Do you want Xiaoxin to talk to Lord Qinshan?" Junqian smiled and waved, "No, let the younger brother do his own business first. We don't need to pay attention to him here. Bai is so happy that no one cares." The action of the millet grains opening the cotton satchel and taking out the dried fish stopped. Junqian added, "Except for millet, of course." Millet grains grinned happily, handing out small dried fish. Bai also glanced at Junqian. Junqian smiled and said, "Eat, why are you standing there? I've tasted it and it tastes pretty good." Bai also had to pick up a dried fish from the stream and chew it carefully. Seeing the little girl secretly looking at herself from the corner of her eye, she had no choice but to say, "It tastes good." The millet was excited and took out a bag of dried fish from the cotton bag and put it on the table. She slapped the bag again and said decisively, "There's more." Bai was speechless. Junqian laughed. "My friend Bai Yi also has today." Lu Qin first sent a secret letter to Xian Duguan, saying that it is not too much to say that it is a family letter. Pindao and Xuanduguan are so familiar with him, and visiting there is like going home and the whole world knows it. As for the fact that before leaving Haoran World, he did a little favor to Master Qin Shanju, is that a help? Pindao and Qin Shanju, those are the best friends who met at the end of Qingping. Then it was a real excursion. In Nanhua City, it was rare for Lu Qin to fast, bathe and change clothes. Along the way, Lu Qin, wearing a lotus crown, waded through the water and saw many bizarre and unimaginable things. Two robes with large sleeves dragged out dazzling colorful glass colors. It's a pity that no one can see this scene along the way. Finally, Lu Qin met a passerby, but unfortunately the other person's figure disappeared in a flash, and Lu Qin didn't have time to speak. Afterwards, I met a big barefooted man who was as big as a mountain compared to Lu Qin. Every time he took a step, there was a thunderous vibration. The water splashed under his feet was often mixed with countless glass splashing in all directions. Fragments. Lu Qin rolled up his sleeves and pocketed a few nearby, pieces of slightly larger glass. Lu Qin and the fellow Taoist who didn't know whether to go to the future or return to the past laughed and thanked them, but they were burly and strong. Han just buried his head and ran wildly, ignoring it. Wandering in the long river of time, being able to meet a pedestrian on the road is already as difficult as going to the sky, and trying to see the face of the other party is even more difficult than going to the sky. Lu Qin didn't dare to count the moment. There were countless vortexes in the river under his feet, and he would fall into it if he was not careful, especially when he encountered some truly enlightened people in the now. The river water touched the stone and swayed. Lu Qin didn't want to lie in a nest somewhere for hundreds of years in a dangerous scene. As for the occasional glimpses of the shore on the road, they are all vague picture fragments. After watching it, if you want to remember that Rao is as high as Lu Qin, you will be a little dizzy, because each picture symbolizes with an indescribable mystery. I don't know how long it took, but thanks to Lu Qin's preparations, every time he walked in the long river of time for 3,000 years, it was an experience. Plus Lu Qin was pulled into the great world by the Buddha back then, so the years passed. Even if it is almost infinitely long, it is still not a difficult problem for Lu Qin. Otherwise, if you change it to the general 14 realms, I am afraid that you will be tortured by this kind of empty, and nothing and no realm, and your Taoist heart will fall. Lu Qin finally stopped and let out a long breath. When he arrived, he was finally found by himself. A large pile of blue and purple talismans in the two large sleeves of the Taoist robe has been reduced to ashes. The scene in front of Lu Qin's eyes was as if he had come to a vast and boundless water surface, as flat as a mirror surface, with gravel under his feet, countless, colorful and splendid. The surface of the water is like a thin layer of colored glass, and the gravel, in fact, when you look closely, every sand is a star just spread one after another. In the extreme distance where Lu Qin exhausted his eyesight, there was a long chain like an iron chain across the river, like a line spanning the sky and the earth. If you have to name it, you can probably call it cause and effect. But Lu Qin still hadn't found the ancient he wanted to talk to. The identity of the guardian, one of the priesthoods, is the late dead and the offender who guard the long river of time. However, even if he went back home now, it was a worthwhile trip, and he finally saw a large number of living creatures, including ancient ghosts and gods. There is a woman who can't see her face clearly, wearing a long cyan dress. Her robe is slowly swaying, and she has the beauty of the dress and belt of a painted lady. She was sitting on her knees, with a small table in front of her, and a few simple-style pottery drinking utensils on it. There is a suspended giant mountain that is constantly sinking, which is about higher than the 5 mountains of Middle-earth put together. But the truth may be shorter than a grain of dust in the vast world. On the top of the mountain, there was a man with no head on his neck holding his head. Above his head, his eyes were as many as holes in a beehive. After discovering Lu Qin, he blinked or closed his eyes, making a buzzing sound. A strange being who kept talking, writing with his fingers, and chanting the 2 words of the Buddha in his nasal voice, seemed not to like being interrupted and exclaimed, "Noisy!" After a while, this strange existence began to repeat the 2 words, "freedom." Occasionally it will be slightly different, and the strange existence will cry and mutter to himself, not knowing cause and effect, not enough, far from enough. On a high snow-white platform that seems to have been tempered with countless pieces of snow, there are various altars for sacrifices. Probably someone who used ancient methods to entertain the gods and seek longevity. The next door of the high platform is an ancient wooden boat with a purple robe, painted with dragons floating on the bow. He sneered in ancient words, "The road is cut off and you still want to lead the world, how can you be insignificant?" There is a man with extremely long eyebrows and extremely white skin. He looks like a real person from ancient times. It is probably rare to see guests here. His face gradually became clearer, and his appearance was handsome, but it was still difficult to hide the bleakness of his eyes. Sitting cross-legged near the long chain, with a halberd on his knees, perhaps it was too long since he had spoken seriously, his voice was as hoarse as a knife grindstone, and he asked with a smile, "Who is from when and where?" It's just that he quickly laughed at himself. "You must not understand it. Starting from that incident, after all, it has been 8,000 years. Lu Qin couldn't understand the other party's words, but he figured it out. "I know it's a Qi trainer from a long time ago. This at least means that in the long future, there are still Qi practitioners who can come here, which is good. Just thinking about it again, it doesn't seem to be necessarily, what if the martial artist is pure enough?" There was a woman with 2 eyebrows shaved. She raised the back of her hands slightly, looked, and then raised her head, looking at the Taoist priest who was a guest from afar. In addition, there is a group of existences, shadows and shadows, looming. According to Lu Chen's rough calculation, most of them are drawn by the road with the wild. That's right, the monks of the monster race are born with strong physical bodies, and they can reach the top of the mountain faster. They are not afraid of the sky and the earth. They always like to break all the old rules and new rules with their hands. An old-fashioned man with a high crown on his head, staggering and swaying, came to a dozen steps in front of Lu Chen's eyes, and asked in wild and elegant words, "Is Lu Fian dead?" Lu Chen smiled and replied, "If the senior is old friends with him, you can cry. If you have a grudge, you can let it go. You don't need to take any revenge because Lu Fian has already been eaten by someone." The old man Gao Guan nodded and stared at the young Taoist priest. Lu Chen asked with a wild and elegant smile, "Dare to ask the senior's name?" The old man Gao Guan narrowed his eyes and said, "I don't have a Taoist name. I used a pseudonym to stamp my feet. Let me think about it. I have to think about it carefully. I think about it. I haven't done anything major, just killing the savage martial artist. Hee, these guys, all eyes are higher than the top, except that you can't go to the ring and ask boxing. Everything is good." The chicken Lu Chen, pecking at the rice, nodded vigorously. "I once asked an expert about boxing, what would happen if the opponent did not cooperate with the stiletto and handle? Senior, guess how the expert answered? The answer, it's very interesting. He said that if you have 100,000 kinds of boxing, you will be the king of 8 boxing when you enter the ring and divide your life and death." The old man Gao Guan nodded and said, "The masters have great views. It's a pity that I can't see them anymore." Lu Chen nodded vigorously and said, "Don't see it, don't see it. I'm afraid that the senior will be killed by him with 2 or 3 punches." The old man Gao Guan stared at Lu Chen for a while. "I believe you, I have really seen that guy." Lu Chen took a step forward and the old man stepped back all the way and said with a smile, "A good Taoist priest, shouldn't you focus on what kind of swordsmanship you learn?" With one move, a wild monster at the peak of the Ascension realm was frightened away. Lu Chen stopped and said triumphantly, "I can't scare you, old man, to death." The old man hesitated for a while, but chose to continue to retreat, and finally his figure dissipated in a cloud of white mist. Lu Chen squatted down, stretched out his palm, and pressed his palm lightly on the surface of the glazed water. Looking down, I seemed to see a butterfly fluttering in the water. A pair of extremely pure golden eyes slowly opened, overlooking the young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown. For this ancient high-ranking deity, even if the Taoist priest is thousands of years old, he is still young. No words, no voices, no ripples. Like a drum, like thunder, like a surging river. "Lu Chen, you tried to cross the border 3,000 years ago. Do you want to try again and violate the law again?" Lu Chen's body swayed, so he had to retract his hand, sighed softly, raised his sleeves, shook out a futon and fell onto the water. Lu Chen sat on the futon with his hands on his stomach, silently, and began to concentrate, sitting and forgetting, his heart fasted. There was an ancient Taoist priest standing on the head of an ancient vicious beast, dragging close to it upstream. "That little newbie Taoist priest, what are you doing here? Is it the perfect Ascension realm or the 14th realm? Within the Taoist legal system, who do you call master? Hurry up and listen." Lu Chen turned a deaf ear. "It doesn't matter who you are, the first Taoist priest in this world and the dumb boy who liked to hang on the tail of the long queue, but they are all Taoist priests of seniority. Why don't you call your ancestors and grandpas? You take a huge advantage. After you go back, I guarantee that you can brag about it with anyone." Lu Chen just held his breath, and with every breath, the true qi condensed between his nostrils, like 2 white snakes hanging down, and the Taoist priest's heel was the same scene. "Xiao Nyobi, I can't see it, you are really good, but I don't know if you have been here for a long time, and you can still show off like this. I can't say that it is not as good as those poor worms, let alone swallowing infuriating facial features and internal organs are all to be flattened. Little Taoist priest, talk to your grandfather and see. There are many qi practitioners who are not as high or low as yours in the world today. Are there any number of hands in the world? It doesn't matter if you don't say anything. You just need to tell me, was that dumb little Taoist priest who saw that everyone was virtuous, and was someone beaten up to find his teeth?" Hearing this, Lu Chen finally opened his eyes and touched his nose. "He is the master of Xiaodao, senior. You wait, Xiaodao will invite the master to come over and reminisce with the senior. Forget it, I don't have much hatred with him. We had a normal relationship back then." After that, the ancient Taoist priest really stopped talking. That strange being who seemed to have cultivated the outsiders Yehu Chan, in fact, had been listening carefully to the conversation between Lu Chen and the Taoist priest, and when he learned that the young Taoist priest was indeed a Taoist priest, he was suddenly disappointed and burst into tears. The woman who likes to raise her hands like a white jade bow waved to Lu Qin and smiled sweetly. Master, is there a new master in Qingqiu now? Lu Qin slapped his head and said, returning to the senior's words, now that there is no Qingqiu in the world, how can you talk about the master? The woman's expression was complicated in an instant, and she seemed to be both shy and smiling. The so-called foxes in later generations on her side would be ashamed of themselves. You came here neither out of bounds nor back, what do you want to do? To prevent anyone from coming here, have a game with my senior brother. Do easy. If you exchange 114 realm for 114 realm. Of course, Lu Chen's senior brother lost even more. Definitely can't do this kind of loss-making business. They said, Lu Chen, you have your reasons and I have my responsibilities. You can't stay here for a long time and go back. Lu Chen said aggrieved, my brother didn't come here often before, why don't you chase people away? They said, it's different, Ko's name Yufeng is almost divine, and it is already a supernatural power. Lu Chen's eyes mournfully said, the poor man asks the heart to interpret dreams, it's almost magical. They said, Tao Fa and supernatural power are different after all. Lu Chen asked, can't you open one eye and close the other? They said, what do you say? Lu Chen just fell backwards and quickly reached out his hand against the surface of the water so he didn't fall to the ground. The god said, they can't leave, they must stay here, why do you Lu Chen spend your life here in vain? Lu Chen jumped up and got up, the futon was burned by the thunder and lightning of several thin threads, and finally it was like water flowing. Another stagger. After that, Lu Chen's feet seemed to be muddy, and every time Lu Chen moved, he would bring out mud as heavy as mountains. In an instant, Lu Chen's figure rose from the ground, and his figure floated horizontally. When he landed, he seemed to slap his feet and his knee joints creaked. In fact, this is why Lu Chen had been at the Yunluan before, why he would fall backwards while sitting on the railing. And why did he slap his feet when he was at the Dragon Elephant Sword sect? Lu Chen raised his hand, put his fingers together, pulled gently and said angrily, if you are so aggressive, Xiao Dao will use his real skills. As if twisting a curtain with two fingers, Lu Chen lifted a corner. In an instant, between the heaven and the earth, which was originally bright as the day, there were countless lights that were as dark as ink, penetrating into this world like a tide. The god shouted, stop. Lu Chen hurriedly stretched out his hand and knocked the pitch black back into the curtain. Then he seemed to let go of his fingers and lowered the curtain again. Lu Chen said angrily, it's Xiaodao's gaffe. A laughter sounded like the echo of the valley but also like the rolling of thunder. Although it is a dog jumping over the wall, it does have a bit of Taoism and it is worthy of being a direct disciple of Taoist ancestors. Lu Chen put his hands on his hips and put on a scolding posture. Sneaky, what are you talking about? You can dance if you have the ability? As for the identity of the other party, Lu Chen was very clear. It is under the jurisdiction of the ancient Heavenly Court Thunder Department, and now the is still there. De Li Jingqing, the guy who worked as a driver for Nanzong, used to be in charge of Zhankan Division. This is half the boss of the old coachman. But it is still not one of the 12 high-ranking gods. He asked, will Ma Xuanhuan die? Lu Chen said angrily, it was said back then that he would let go of a horse, and Pindao has already saved him once, otherwise he would have been beaten to death by Chen Pingan long ago, so what about Pindao? The gods remained silent and retreated to the divine position. Lu Chen breathed a sigh of relief. The conscience of heaven and earth is only a few moments of impoverishment. Although this deity has always hoped that Ma Xuanhuan can enlighten, and then embark on a divine way. However, the dojo of the old thunder gods in the world is not the Jianghu mountain where Ma Xuanhuan practiced. Jianghu mountain, one of the ancestral families of the Aquarius continent, is actually one of the dojos of another god. If this really started to ask questions, Lu Chen would have to make a slap in the face before speaking properly, and he had to be polite. After all, whether it's senior master headmaster or senior brother Yu, they are extremely respectful to this virtuous deity. Because in the ancient times about 6,000 years ago, a group of majestic existences with new god names appeared. The god named Daijia, who traveled around Sui Mountain in Middle-earth, as well as those land-based real people with their own mountain governance, all appeared at about the same time. And the patriarchs of the three sects all recognized these divine names. For example, one of the gods is called Jianghu. In the Qingming world, the Baiyujing, the heavenly transformation heavenly demon, in addition to being afraid of the Taoist ancestor, is also afraid of this true martial arts god. There is another osmanthus tree on the moon, which blooms in spring, and the osmanthus is reigning in the sky. This goddess can be regarded as a female who fills a part of the vacancy, and her name is Xuanhuan. It's just that she was always reluctant to return to that dojo. Lu Qin stretched out his hand to his ear and waited for a long time without hearing anything, then retracted his hand and said tentatively, "Each one step back?" Still silent, Lu Qin felt relieved, and this was the promise. Lu Qin's figure dissipated, stopped in one place and reappeared. He no longer saw the lively scene before, and there was a vast white fog. The Taoist priest wearing the lotus crown is all alone. Only the dead in the heaven and the earth can't give up day and night. Lu Qin's expression was unprecedentedly solemn, without the slightest bit of normal air. Then the poor road is here, waiting for the white Emperor Cheng to be in the middle. In Huaihuang County, an old house that has never been sold to outsiders. Dong Shuijing opened the door and said with a smile, "Yo, isn't this Lin Yupu? It's an honor to come here." Lin Shui stepped over the threshold and stretched out his hand. "Don't talk nonsense, hurry up." Dong Shuijing wondered, "Why?" Lin Shui said, "Congratulations." Dong Shuijing was amused, "You are learning from Wei Shanjun." Lin Shui said, "I borrowed some Guyu money from Chen Pingan, and I have to return it to him sooner." Dong Shuijing smiled and said, "Scare me, I thought you were going to get married." Lin Shui raised his foot and gestured to kick someone, but Dong Shuijing turned sideways and said with a smile, "A scholar speaks and does not do anything. If you use the words of Qin Shanju, the two chickens out of the cage peck each other." Lin Shui said, "Old rules, sloppy." Dong Shuijing went to the kitchen to make a fire and served 2 bowls of wontons. When Dong Shuijing was busy, Lin Shui, who was sitting at the table of the 8 immortals in the main room, turned his head and stared blankly at the willow tree in the courtyard. As for the well beside the tree, Lin Yupu didn't even see it. By the time Dong Shuijing brought a big bowl of steaming wontons in one hand, Lin Shui had already withdrawn his sight. Lin Shui took the bowl and chopsticks and asked, "Do you know what Qin Pingan called us to come over this time?" Dong Shuijing shook his head and said, "I didn't ask." As soon as Lin Shou ate the wontons, he began to pick and choose. Dong Shuijing didn't even bother to listen, so he lowered his head to eat. "When I was in the school, I didn't like this guy, not because Lin Shui was a child of a rich family, but he liked to put on a bad face every day." Afterwards, Dong Shuijing was even more displeased with Lin Shui. "She is the same age as the two of them, and she is Li Huai's sister. That wicker-like slender woman, and she is still so gentle." Dong Shuijing asked, "How much do you owe Qin Pingan?" Lin Shui said, 100. Dong Shuijing nodded and said, "He'll give you a cushion first." Lin Shui said, "Guyu Qian." Dong Shuijing pretended to be surprised, "I thought it was Xiaoxua Qian." Lin Shui scolded the rich man. Dong Shuijing said, "You have such a good relationship with Chen Pingan, why are you willing to owe me a favor?" Lin Shui said, "The dadu is excavated in Tonggishao, and there are places where money is needed." Dong Shuijing said, "I don't have a place to spend money?" Lin Shou pouted, "You Dong Banqing only have a place to make money. I have to admit that this guy Dong Shuijing is really a good material for earning money." Lin Shou admired him just by talking about one of the businesses. He packaged up several immortal hilltops with good spiritual energy, especially with clear water veins, and fiddled with some potted plants, specially pitting the silver of the generals, ministers and dignitaries under the mountains. The euphemism is to save money for the children and grandchildren. If there are 1 or 2 potted plants, the Shantao Xinfu will carefully record the files, and according to the requirements of each customer, make an appointment in advance, and the descendants must be taken home in a certain year. Of course, they can also be on the spot. Converting it into fairy money, taking things in advance or changing money is not acceptable. Unless the real family is in trouble and they are too poor to open the pot, as long as the children of the family go up the mountain, they can exchange for a slightly discounted immortal money. The fairy mansion that cultivates bonsai can even help keep a family tree. Anyway, that's the thing. No matter how big or small, everything is covered. Lin Shui heard that there were indeed a large number of dignitaries and gentry from various countries. He was tempted and they all paid for it. The countries under the mountain followed countless trends at once. For this purpose, Lin Shui had to admire Dong Shuijing's business experience. This is just one of many business lines for Dong Shuijing. Dong Shuijing scolded for no reason, "Useless." Lin Shou glared at him and said, "A trash worse than me." The chicks started pecking at each other again. There are clouds above the layers of clouds, and at the bottom of the clouds is the human world. Ma Yuan drank wine and his poetry flourished, but he had to prepare a preface first. Unlike many scholars, Ma Yuan likes to recite and excerpt the prefaces of various poems and songs by himself. Zhao Yao, the servant of the Ministry of Punishment, took a ferry belonging to the military of Delhi. This time, Zhao Yao returned to his hometown with Ma Yuan, his immediate superior, and Guanyiran, a member of the Ministry of Housing and Qing officials. Zhao Yao was called by that little uncle, and Guanyiran was a fake public servant who came here to see his friends by the way, the lord of Luopao Mountain, Chen Shanzhu, and Jingquan, who had been the prefect of Baoshi County for a few days. Are the kind of good friends who can even vomit when drinking plain wine in Changpu River. The ferry boat bypasses the Beiwepiun mountain far away, which means that it is close to Nujiadu. Ma Yuan stood leaning on the railing at the outdoor viewing platform, and tapped the railing lightly. Seeing this beautiful scenery, he was moved and began to recite poems. Zhao Yao and Guanyiran were sitting in the house drinking, and Guanyiran turned around and said with a smile, "Uncle Ma, you are writing again. Do you want me to help you compile your thousands of limericks into a book, and then find a bookstore to spend the money on? The money is printed? No worries about sales, there are so many yamen in the capital. As long as it is an official below the 2nd rank, above the 9th rank, and 1 handbook, my capital will be recovered. This deal is done. If you add more with the capital, you can make a lot of money." The interrupted Master Xianxia didn't turn his head, just raised a finger. Zhao Yao smiled and said, "If Lord Xianxia really wants to publish a book of poems, even if he doesn't follow official relations, he just uses a pseudonym, and he doesn't have to worry about selling it at all." Guanyiran teased, "Zhao Shirlang, how can you be an official? Don't do this kind of flattery sooner. Our Uncle Ma is going to Sunfall Ferry soon. Will you burn a cold stove?" Zhao Yao asked directly, "Isn't it in the wild world, still holding the title of Xianxia? Will you step down?" Guanyiran raised his chin. "This kind of thing, only the high officials who are qualified to participate in the small court meeting in the imperial study room know about it. You ask the right master." Ma Yuan walked back to the house and said, "You don't need to step down. Anyway, we have you as a servant in the Ministry of Punishment, and you won't be able to make mistakes. Besides, in the 6th yamen the high position can't be completely stationary, but it can't be too frequent." Guanyiran laughed and said, "For Zhao Shirlang this is not good news. We have to drink wine to drown one's worries. Come, Zhao Shirlang, let's go." Zhao Yao was a little helpless. The contemporary head of the Ma family in Xiangzhu Kingdom, not long ago, was actually the minister of the household, and was transferred to the Ministry of Punishment as the chief official, neither promotion nor demotion. From the original left servant of the Ministry of Punishment, Mu Yen, was promoted to the Minister of Household Affairs, replacing Ma Yuan, and became the minister of a country. The bureaus of the Ministry of Punishment, as well as the cultivators who are named in the Ministry of Punishment, are naturally happy to see it. Regarding that war, which of the 6 chief officials of the Dali court was more responsible, it was only Xin Shen or Ma Yuan, and it had nothing to do with Zhao Duanjin, Minister of Rights. Also with the surname of Shangshiguo, Chao Ping and Yan Jiao, have already gone to the Sunfall Ferry in the wild world to join Song Changjing and the feudal king Song Mu. And the owner of the Ma family in Poyang is a bloated man with a face full of flesh. As long as Ma Yuan does not wear official uniforms and steps on his boots, he looks like a rich family in a small county at most. No more, the county government, the richest man is unlikely to be Ma Yuan's virtue. But people don't look good. Although Ma Yuan was born with a big and round shoulders, he might be able to scare those timid people walking on the streets of Beijing alone at night. Women are afraid of robbery and men are afraid of robbery. Yes, but this Ma Xianxia, who has been in charge of Dallas Moneybag for many years, is a very famous and talented man. He has a hairpin in small script, and his writing is very consummate. He is the old man of the Zhao family who is the patriarch of the pavilion of the Dali dynasty. It is said that Ma Yuan's small script is exactly the opposite of his appearance. It means that as ugly as Ma Yuan's people are, the characters are as beautiful as they are. And Ma Yuan, as a great minister who is recognized as one of the arms of the national teacher Chuiyu, is indeed a very vulgar official. It is also one of the 2 fastest promotions in Dallas officialdom in recent decades. Ma Yuan in the capital in the north, and Lu Qingfeng in the capital in the south. As for why Guanyiran was able to speak so freely on Ma Yuan's side, it was because Ma Yuan's imperial examination teacher was Guanyiran's great-grandfather. The ironclad old minister of the Ministry of Officials, the servant Lang and the middle class of the flowing water. In addition, before Ma Yuan became a high-ranking official of the 3rd rank, every 3 years, Ma Yuan had a major plan to inspect the capital. No matter whether Ma Yuan was an official in Beijing or a local government, he always made a grade A comment without any suspense. This made Ma Yuan, who was born in the Ma family in Poyang, Xiangzhu Kingdom, to move 7 times in 3 years in the government office at the beginning. This gave Ma Yuan a coveted official nickname Vest. Therefore Ma Yuan, who likes to scold people the most, is the only one who doesn't scold Guaniran. Of course, apart from such a relationship, Guaniran's accounting, especially his ability to check accounts, is really not bad. In the dark night, the eastern boundary of Aquarius continent has left the Xuanhuan kingdom, which is a vassal of Dali. Li Bao, who has been the Minister of Rites for many years, treats the guests in person today. Lumin. This young Qi practitioner is a native of Xuanhuan country. Li Bao has the appearance of a bookish old man. After he closed his study, he became Li Baozhen, the weaving officer of the Dali dynasty. In the early years, when Li Baozhen was serving as a spy, the leader of Dali Lubiting, he changed his official status in Xuanhuan kingdom. He was promoted quickly and soon became the Minister of Rites. He has presided over many conferences, and is a well-deserved person in the palm of a country. In addition, Li Baozhen was still in the Xuanhuan kingdom. Several of the grand emperors behind the scenes of the vassal states of Dali in the past, the immortal houses on the mountain, and the sects of the rivers and lakes under the mountain were all under Li Baozhen's control. Lu Min didn't want to see Li Baozhen at first, but one of his secret mansion was stolen. There are 2 bowls on the table, 1 bowl of ink and 1 bowl of water. In this study, there are not any sage books, they are all miscellaneous books that are useless for the imperial examinations, and useless for the people's hearts. Li Baozhen poured himself a glass of wine, took the lead and sat down, stretched out his hand and pressed it twice, signaling the guest to be polite. Lu Min hesitated for a moment and sat on the opposite chair. Playing against chairs is like a game of chess. Li Baozhen asked with a smile, "Where's Wang Yifu? Have you met each other over the years?" Lu Min was silent. At that time, Lu Min's own master and later De Li accompanied Lu Qingfeng, Minister of Rites of the capital, and served as a parental official in a small county in his hometown of Xuanhuan. Wang Yifu was the county captain at the time. Later, when Lu Qingfeng changed places, he went to a birdhouse. The small border county of served as the prefect, and Wang Yifu followed along and served as a coachman all the way. As Lu Qingfeng's book boy or half a student, Lu Min had a good relationship with the outspoken Wei Wangxian at that time, because the other party often accompanies Lu Qingfeng to drink together. It seems that as long as Lieutenant Wang speaks, he can make his master, who is always frowning slightly alone, think a few more words. I remember one time drinking, Wang Yifu once asked his master a question, wanting to know how he viewed the mountains. Because Lu Min drank alcohol at the time, he couldn't remember too much, but one of the truths of the question and answer between his master and Wang Xianwei has made Lu Min deeply remembered to this day. From my master's point of view, the so-called immortals on the mountain are just ordinary masters with bigger fists, that's all, there are few exceptions. At that time, Lu Qingfeng still had a question which was asked of Lu Min. Of course, it was more likely to be a kind of self-talk and self-questioning by a master, which was related to whether he obeyed the rules, including those who set the rules. Li Baozhen pointed to a booklet on the table and said with a smile, "Lu Min, you are a very cautious person, so I'm even more surprised. What do you think? I don't keep this kind of thing in your mind, dare to write it down on paper?" On the top of the booklet was an interlocking plan, aimed at a big man who could kill Lu Min with just one finger. The two sides are about the same age, but the realm is too different. Lu Min still did not speak. Li Baozhen asked, "Is it still from Lu Xianxia's idea? You just help me write it down?" Lu Min finally said, "If it's my master's idea, if you get the booklet, it must be counted." Li Baozhen nodded, "Probably so. I remember watching a snack of Lu Lao Shangshu back then. There was a sect on the mountain with a guilty conscience, and he was about to reveal a scandal. He asked Lu Qingfeng to help, and Lu Qingfeng helped to fabricate a similar scandal. There was a lot of uproar and the Shanshui Dibao was talking about this. Of course, the result could only prove the innocence of that sect, and then there was another gossip that slandered this sect, and the cultivator began to work hard to prove his innocence. After that, and when the real scandal is reported, they will not take it seriously and will not want to get to the bottom of it." Li Baozhen found Lu Qingfeng and the latter just said it lightly. Of course, in return, the sect with little wealth, smashing pots and selling iron, secretly took the initiative to send a large sum of immortal money to the Luojing household department. Li Baozhen still doesn't know whether the real victim of that scandal was too late to expose a small sect of the enemy's family, whether he had obtained the kind of justice that they were satisfied with, or that they truly recognized in their hearts. As for the booklet on the table, Lu Min recorded the entry point of the plan in it, which was regarded as the first move against Chen Pingan. It is Ruan Xiu of Longquan Sword Sect. In this way the sudden fortunes of Qin Pingan and Luo Pashan are more reasonable, especially benevolent. The two parties have already made a private agreement for life. Then two small sects with Shanshui Dibao to promote this matter were tragically wiped out and died under the sword qi. Of course, no one would believe that this was Luo Pashan's method. But this is the first link, a small foreshadowing. However, some people who are interested may at this stage they will start to guess whether it is Xinjiang Mountain's slander and blame. And Ruan Xiong of Longquan Jianzong, the chief worshipper of the Dali dynasty, knew that this incident was false, and the content of these Shanshui Di newspapers was even more false, but the relationship with Luopao Mountain. The second link is Shujian Lake, which is related to Gukan. It can be mutually corroborated with a certain landscape travel journal. Li Baozhen turned his head to look at the two bowls of water on the table, smiled and said, Gukan is the bowl of ink, no matter how you mix it, it's all ink, but Qin Pingan is the bowl of water dipped in a little ink, it starts to turn from clear to turbid. Already. Lu Min nodded, not denying Li Baozhen's point of view. Lu Min, do you have a grudge against Qin Pingan? No. The first time we met, did you find him unpleasant? When we first met, I felt that he and my master were ordinary scholars. They were gentle, approachable, able to cultivate themselves, teach others and do things better. The first time we met was on the road outside the lion forest in Xuanhuan country. In order to make way for a small black charcoal on the road, the ox cart rushed into the pond, and they became chickens. But that Qin Pingan's performance at that time made Lu Min feel good. Just like what my master said, no matter what kind of family it is, whether it is a wealthy family or a small family, as long as the child makes a mistake, the adult cannot replace the apology. Wrong. That's because I think he is very lucky. He became famous at a young age, made great achievements in other places, made a name for himself, and became a disciple of the Confucian temple saint. The Taoist is still the first person in the colorful world. It's all for him? Makes you jealous and thinks the way of heaven is unfair? You want to fight for your master Lu Lao Shangshu? Am not jealous. I have carefully studied his family history. I must admit that all the benefits are what Qin Pingan deserves. In the officialdom of Dali, there are two people who are promoted the fastest, namely Ma Yuan, the chief minister of Dali, and Lu Qingfeng, the minister of ceremonies in the capital. The most interesting thing is that the whole official circle knows that Lu Qingfeng was used by His Majesty the Emperor to monitor Luo Wang Songmu, but the vassal King Songmu always treated each other with courtesy. The reason why Luojing, the companion capital, never became Songmu's yamen alone, was that there was Lu Qingfeng. The book boy Lu Min and the squire Wang Yifu are the two people who have followed Lu Qingfeng for the longest time. Especially Lu Min, who has been by the master's side since he was young. But Lu Qingfeng was already dead because he was not a cultivator. The old man didn't even think about becoming a deity. But Lu Min would not hate a scholar recognized by his master because of this. Before his death, Lu Qingfeng once joked with Lu Min that the only person who can improve the policies of the national teacher Chuiyu in the future is not in conspiracy, not in trivial deeds that are visible on the surface, but in honesty, in morality, and in people's hearts. Chuiyu deliberately left room for the real deeds, because he personally said that those who learn from me live like me and die. Just like all of Li Baozhen's actions in Qinghuan Kingdom, in the eyes of Lu Qingfeng, he just said lightly, what sense of accomplishment do we have when we hunt for righteousness with injustice? The key point is that Li Baozhen had to praise the other party sincerely at that time, which was indeed better than himself. The legalist monk Wei Liang once helped the national teacher Chuiyu to set up a monument on the top of Yizhou Mountain. And Lu Qingfeng wrote the genealogy of the gods of Yizhou, which was almost copied by the Confucian temple. Then I'm going to be so strange that I can't understand it at all. There is no injustice and no hatred. What are you asking for by doing this? Nothing to ask for. Hearing this, Li Baozhen was finally surprised instead of pretending and asked, Lu Min, are you purely malicious? Lu Min started to shut up again and even closed his eyes. Li Baozhen twisted the empty wine glass in his hand and said with a smile, Lu Qingfeng must have reminded you at some point during his lifetime that if someone threatened you someday, such as me, just betray him and let you have a small life? Lu Min opened her eyes and nodded, Li Ziz's magic trick, that's true. The master told me to forget the content of that conversation as soon as possible, otherwise I would definitely not be able to deceive you. The master hopes that he can become the second Li Baozhen, but he is smarter than Li Baozhen, but it is too difficult. Li Baozhen asked, do you know why I haven't done this? Lu Min replied, because you guessed that the master would do this, you feel boring. You have always been too lazy to do things that are not interesting. Li Baozhen nodded with a smile, Accurately speaking, it is meaningless and meaningless. Lu Min asked back, then how can you be sure that the master didn't guess that you would do this? Li Baozhen's smile froze. Lu Min smiled and said, Li Jizao doesn't need to pretend. In the final analysis, you are just afraid of a living Lu Xianxia. To be precise, if he is dead, you are still afraid because he will leave behind someone specially aimed at you. Li Baozhen smiled brightly and nodded vigorously. Then I'm going to ask you, is there such a killer? Lu Min sneered, I said yes, but you don't want to believe it all. I said no, but you still doubt it. Then if I say yes, I dare to ask Li Jizao what is the meaning of this question? Li Baozhen threw the wine glass back on the table and clapped his hands. Lu Min, I finished asking, do you have anything else to say? Lu Min closed her eyes. You and I are just waiting to die. Li Baozhen sneered and said, you are pretending to be mysterious, pretending to be a ghost. Do you really think you are Lu Qingfeng? Outside the door of the study, there was a soft applause. Lu Min smiled and said, come on. I have always kept silent about the name Qin Pingan. You Li Baozhen don't believe in evil. Li Baozhen calmed himself, looked out the door, his face was ashen and asked, who? Wearing a green shirt and saying goodbye to the hosta, as if entering a realm of no one, stepping into the study, it's really unfortunate Lu Xianxia is gone and I'm still here. If you want to kill Lu Min, it will never be your turn. This man was followed by a young squire with a yellow hat and blue shoes and a green bamboo stick. Li Baozhen asked, how could it be you? Coincidentally? Qin Pingan stood behind the chair, stretched out his hand to hold Lu Min's head firmly, twisted it gently and said with a smile, if you don't learn well, but if you don't learn well, you will really die if you are careful. Li Baozhen wanted to speak with his heart, wanted to call out the name of his eldest brother, but found that he could only be silent, let alone speak. Then Li Baozhen was horrified to discover that Qin Pingan, who was here at this time, actually had a pair of pure golden eyes. A lonely city among colorful clouds. In the White Emperor City, this place where the true and false are confused, there are countless flying swords, the movement is disordered and the speed is uncertain. It was Zheng Juzhong who spent 3,000 years to spend money to buy, accept offerings, collect secret realms or copy the originals. Zheng Juzhong made and imitated them by himself. Centering comes from the fantasy, through years of deduction and calculus. Zheng Juzhong, who looked up at a celestial and star map, withdrew his gaze. This road probably won't work. The other Zheng Juzhong shook his head and said, not necessarily. Exhausting the mind of human beings can only be like this. Is it possible to ask others for help? The question is, who can I turn to? There is no Chuiyu in the world. Wait and see. For example, play that game of chess with the headmaster Bai Yujing Ko first. The name of Bai Yujing is a pirate, and the Taoism is as high as a dragon. I have dragon slaying skills, please see the sword. Apart from Zheng Juzhong, the only cultivators in Beidasheng who have visited this secret realm in history seem to be only the pioneering disciple Fu Su and the closing disciple Gu Kan. The sword repairer, Fu Su, once sat here for more than a month without getting anything. Gu Kan was even more hopeless than his senior brother Fu Shu, so he just asked his master some very layman questions. Jianxiu has a flying sword. If there is no teacher and family learning, he is ignorant. Do you need to find it by yourself? The natal supernatural power of Feijin? Of course it is necessary, but the difference between the difficulty and the easy is huge. The sword cultivator searches for and investigates the magical powers of flying swords, such as diving into the water to find fish. It is somewhat obscure and the water is deep, so you need to patiently. Some are simple but you can see it. You don't have to work hard. As for the depth of the water and the shallowness of the water, it has nothing to do with the rank of Feijin, it's all luck. Many Fijians' supernatural powers are clearly like a dragon swimming in the shallows. Sword repair is easy and you can pull the dragon's beard. Go ashore and become one's own possessions. Some natal supernatural powers are like a small fish swimming on the bottom of the sea. Jianxiu spends a lot of effort to find them, but he still gains very little. He can only laugh at himself. The great monks who are famous in one continent are actually sword cultivators with hidden identities, but they are embarrassed to admit that they are sword cultivators. So I was ashamed to open my mouth and dared not to call myself a sword cultivator. To say that there are almost no Shanzai cultivators in the world, the reason is that the sects on the mountain are looking for sword cultivators outside, and they spare no effort. Carefully sculpted and cultivated at the expense of financial resources, and the birth of a flying sword of life, there are traces to follow: the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Beiju Luzhou, the ancient Shu boundary of Aquarius Island, and several other Feng Shui and Howren treasure land. the possibility of sword cultivators appearing is far more than other places. Having 2 or more natal flying swords or a flying sword with several natal supernatural powers, does it have an innate advantage? For Jinxiu himself, of course, this is the case. Between Feijian and Feijian, as well as between the natal supernatural powers that retreat, the explanation of the two is similar, or the complementary of the two is opposite. There are different degrees of gain. But if you put it in all sword repairs in history, it is not necessarily true. For example, your master has only one flying sword of destiny, but all flying swords related to the water method can be repaired by thousands of swords. The flying swords are stacked on top of each other, and the one facing them is still like a group of ministers seeing the monarch, so they can only bow their heads. Is it a question from a university about the name of each flying sword? I heard that the name of the flying sword is Takeo Yamashita's boxing move. It should not be rumored or leaked. Excluding that kind of sword cultivator's name or the blind man touching the elephant, a flying sword, if the name is too big, is an empty shelf that is not worthy of the name, and the name and the reality will clash, and then affect the flying sword's life and supernatural powers. If you are young, you will lose everything because it means that the confused sword cultivator has not yet figured out the true connection between the flying sword and the supernatural power of life. Disciple only has one last question. The origin of Feijin can only depend on life? It's all destiny beyond fate. You said that Jianxiu can only rely on fate. It's not wrong, but it's not enough. Between the colorful clouds stands a large scorpion, and the stone table below it is carved with a chessboard, and there are 2 tins of chess pieces on it. There was an old man in a blue shirt, with his hands behind his head. The phrase, blessing the world first, is well known in the world. Han Xiao's heartfelt voice sounded, Senior brother, master has come to Baidi City. Zheng Juzhong said, let him wait a moment, it'll go over immediately. If you just learn swordsmanship for Zheng Juzhong, it can't be said that there is no benefit at all, but it is of little significance. Because Zheng Juzhong has already tried it. Therefore Zheng Juzhong completely abandoned this path. A young god who was pure sword cultivation in the Ascension realm was in the body and outer body. Facts have proved that even if it is a pure sword cultivator of the 14th realm, there is still a long way to go from the avenue that Zheng Ju thought in the center. Then there is a sword outside the sword and the technique seeks the Tao. The road that Bai Yi took back then was not bad. The 2 Zheng Juzhong merged into one, looked at the flying swords and said to themselves, it's like a person's surname, first name, character, number. In fact, there are quite a lot of future sword cultivators who have come to this secret realm, but Zheng Juzhong watched their raising the Feijian from the sidelines, and the harvest was still very small. After all, it is not a world where the avenues are completely circulated. As for Fu Su and Gu Qin among the disciples, it was only luck that Zheng Juzhong did not erase their memories. Under the big screen next to the stone table. After Qin Qinglu lost one hand, he played the score by himself on the chessboard. Zheng Juzhong appeared and said, Master. Don't dare. Qin Qinglu didn't lift his head, I'm afraid of losing my life. Han Xiaosa was used to this. In those days, the master and his brother were together less often, but as long as they met each other, it was always the same situation. After 3,000 years of separation, the master and apprentice finally reunited, but the result is still so unsurprising. Han Ko's didn't know the origin of the master and the blind Taoist priest in Beipingzu. As for what the driver of Beiju Luzhou was in vain, and the scholar Qinzhuoyo he didn't even know. Master's roots are not in Haoran Jiuzhou, but from a blessed land in Luxiazu. Han Ko's first saw Master when she was a young girl. At that time, Master was accompanied by a maid with a short spear named xianxia. Han Xiao's first impression when she saw the burly woman back then was that she was really tall and had a big physique. But for some reason, xianxia always considered herself a maid, but her master called her a senior sister. Later, the master accepted Lu Daochun's troublemaker as a young disciple, and xianxia took great care of Lu Daochun and gave him a pink Taoist robe and a glazed pavilion. Han Ko's couldn't understand this at the time. Why did that woman surnamed Xia add to Lu Daochun's blue eyes? Later I asked my senior brother Zheng Juzhong to know the answer. It turned out to be, a fool looks at a fool and is extra kind. But Han Xiaosa had doubts again because she could feel that senior brother Zheng was actually very close to xianxia, even closer than Master Qin Qinglu. Zheng Juzhong said that Lu Daochun is a half-smart person who likes to pretend to be stupid, and belongs to a real fool. Xianxia is not stupid but willing to be stupid, so he is really smart. Qin Qinglu threw the chess piece in his palm on the chessboard, looked up and asked, Do you know why I refused to teach you swordsmanship? Master is willing to say a few more words is the best. The implication of Zheng Zhezhong's words is naturally that he, a disciple, already knows the answer. But Master, you can find something if you don't have anything to say. As a disciple, just listen patiently. To say that this eldest disciple has done something wrong or not, there really isn't anything wrong. On the contrary, it is only said that on the side of Taishishan Guo Outing, who was beating and trying to breach the contract, was Jing Juzhong to climb the mountain instead of his master. A city of White Emperor standing in the divine continent of Middle-earth, the city owner Jing Juzhong, recognized as the #1 giant in the world of demons. In the past, except for the vast world, the Qingming world and the wild world may not recognize it, but now they have to pinch their noses to recognize this fact. Beta Shengzheng is in the middle, really, unreasonably strong. Even the old scholar, when Gong Delan was drinking with Chen Qinglu, had to say something about our brother's ability to accept apprentices. There is really nothing to say. But to say that Jing Juzhong, the first disciple of the mountain, is so good and he is liked by Master, I am sorry, but Chen Qinglu really can't like it. Damn, this guy is so smart. I remember that when Jing Juzhong had just started practicing, he fell in love with chess. Chen Qinglu felt that this was a bit out of business. A chi practitioner in the lower 5 realms has such spare time? How can you reassure your master to teach you swordsmanship? He just played a game with this great disciple, guessing chess pieces black and white. As a result, 30 to 6 times in a row, they all correctly guessed the color of the pieces. The young man didn't even look at the hand where the master was hiding the chess piece. From beginning to end, he just stared at Chen Qinglius' eyes. Chen Qinglu seemed calm at the time, looking at the pale and colorless disciple across the table, but his eyes were shining brightly. Chen Qinglu began to murmur in his heart that he, the master, was picking up treasures by taking shit. Or did you go out without looking through the almanac and encounter a monster? Among those savage old beasts who just woke up, who do you think is the most likely to join the 14th realm? Well, Xiaomo on Luapa Mountain, except for Bai Jing, who has turned into a little girl, is pretty good. Although they are not human, they are human. Unlike some people in certain places, they are obviously human, but they are too immortal. Even the dojos are not on the ground. Right in the middle. Chen Qinglu sat down on the stone bench, looked at the 2 direct disciples standing and said with a smile, "Pretty, don't be stunned, sit down and talk." In fact, there were only 2 stone benches beside the table. Han Xiao glanced at senior brother. Zheng Juzhong smiled and nodded. She dared to take a seat. It's easy to say elsewhere. Han Xiao say is not so restrained. After all, when you sit here you usually have to play chess with your senior brother. But Zheng Juzhong didn't care about the harsh words of his master and said, "The pseudonym is Wang Youwu and the Taoist name is Shanjun. Its real body is not the Shanjun we think the world thinks." While speaking between the master and the apprentice on the side of the chess table, there appeared an elderly Taoist priest wearing a bamboo crown, carrying a sword and riding a deer. Chen Qinglu frowned and said, "Isn't that Bai Jing?" Zheng Juzhong said, "She ranks 3rd. Pure swordsmanship, it's more difficult to get along, even if the path under your feet is in the right direction. It seems that there is only a line of separation, but it is still quite far. This ancient demon clan who stole the title of Shanjun, the opportunity to meet the road lies in the phrase tyranny is stronger than tiger in later generations. Therefore, 10,000 years later, in the wild world, the more tyrannical the road is, the higher its Taoism will be. You can sit back and enjoy it." It was able to take the lead because of the arrangement of the ancestor of Toyua Mountain and Zhou, who drove half of the world to the Great Wall of Sword Qi to pave the way for it to join the road. I believe that Wang Youwu had already woken up at that time. After that, it's just pretending to be asleep. I guess it's only half a step away. Wang Youwu, who has stepped in with 1 foot and stepped on the threshold with half of his foot, can enter the 14th realm, but it is hidden deeper. So wait until the battle was tragic, and within a few years Wang Youwu will be able to become the 14th realm. Hearing that there will be an additional 14th realm cultivator in the world, Chen Qinglu was completely indifferent, but just glanced at the sky. Among the 14 realm cultivators, how could there be no distinction between superior and inferior? Maybe Zheng Juzhong was the only cultivator who dared to call Zhou by his first name in the human world. As for the remaining small group of great cultivators, it doesn't mean that they are not as strong as Zheng Juzhong, but they are not suitable because of their status. In short, they each have their own concerns. Chen Qinglu asked, "The second one is that anonymous person who deliberately avoided Bai Zhe?" Zheng Juzhong shook his head and said, "It's the one with the pseudonym Ligo. The appearance of a boy with heavy pupils has been shown in the sky before." Chen Qinglu frowned and said, Isn't the road to the joint path of refining things already taken first by others? There is a wuzhou called Taiyin in the Qingming world, and it is one step ahead. It stands to reason that every road of the great cultivator that joins the 14 realms is a single plank bridge. Just like Jinxiu Xiaomo's success has fallen short, it is because Xuanduguan Sun Daoist is already on the road. Zheng Juzhong explained, Ligo once chose two paths at the same time, one is to refine things, the other is to eat books. The Tao manifested as a silverfish and created a book city trying to do the opposite. After Zhoumi ascended to the sky, it means that he deliberately gave up a single plank bridge that was almost ascending to the sky to Ligua. Therefore Ligua relied on this to join the road. It was not a big accident and it was almost a conclusion. Han Qiao's eyelids trembled. Qin Qinglu was still calm. Do you think him against Li Jiao? Zheng Juzhong said, he didn't dare to kill him at all, so when he met Master he would only avoid his edge. Qin Qinglu laughed. Han Qiao couldn't help laughing and she was no longer so nervous. Qin Qinglu smiled and said, then I, the Master, can't thank you, this apprentice? Zheng Juzhong said, I have to thank Master for not temporarily changing the color of the pieces in his hand. Qin Qinglu was silent for a moment, then said, I actually wanted to fool you when I was on the 18th pawn. It was that stupid big man who blocked it twice with his heart. Zheng Juzhong said, I recognize the process and I also recognize the result, so I have always been grateful to Master and her. If there is a 37th guess, Zheng Juzhong can still guess correctly, but it is very likely that it will hurt the foundation of the Tao. That's why Qin Qinglu said today that Xie Shiji had blocked him twice. Zheng Juzhong continued, Wang Youwu, Li Jiao, and then there is a certain possibility of Bai Jing and that anonymous. But besides them, there is actually a concubine Fei who will walk before Bai Jing when the opportunity is right. On the surface, the concubine's ability to join the road is due to Bai Ze's guidance, but in fact, it can still be regarded as an old road that has been carefully laid out. Qin Qinglu said with a smile, if Zhoumi is as powerful as you said, why would he go to the sky and run away in despair, and can only wait for the patriarch of the three sects to join the road, and then go and ask him a question? Zheng Juzhong said, when Hai Zhoumi was only one person after all. Qin Qinglu asked, what if Zhoumi was with you in Xiaohu? Zheng Juzhong smiled and said, it's best not to make assumptions about human affairs and don't talk about what if. Qin Qinglu clicked his tongue and said, Master is teaching the disciples. Zheng Juzhong rested one hand on the stone table and said with a smile, Master. Qin Qinglu waited for the next sentence, but Zheng Juzhong did not continue to speak. Qin Qinglu laughed and scolded, Stinky boy, are you kidding me? Zheng Juzhong said with a smile on his face, Master taught the disciples a lot back then, and there is one sentence that the disciples will always keep in mind. Qin Qinglu said angrily, I'm getting old, my eyes are dim, my brain is not enough, don't let me guess, if you have a fart, let it go. Zheng Juzhong said, Master once said to me, Zhuzhong, Master has only one disciple like you, and you can make more progress in the future to make Master happy. Qin Qinglu wondered, I actually said such serious words? Zheng Juzhong said with a smile, it was because I was drinking too much. Master's drunken words are from the heart. Qin Qinglu rubbed his chin and muttered, damn it, there's an extra devil in the world, Zheng Juzhong, so why do you have to blame me, Qin Qinglu? Zheng Juzhong raised his hand, waved his sleeves and pointed to Tongyi's Hao, where the Confucian scholar Li Shixing was located. He smiled and said, all gentlemen look at Duizi and kill Qingming for Haoran. Qin Qinglu was stunned for a moment and then suddenly yelled, Stinky boy, you tell me what to do with this, you can rest assured, what's the difference between you and bullying your teacher and destroying your ancestors? Really afraid of what to come. At this moment, a young Taoist boy appeared out of thin air and gently pressed Zheng Juzhong's arm. Scholar, don't be so angry. Beside the young Dao Tong, there was also a tall sword-carrying Taoist standing. Daozu, second disciple Yudo. Never thought that there would be another old master soon. He stretched out his hand to support Zheng Juzhong's arm. Lift it up, just lift it up, we scholars, why can't we say rhetoric? The most holy master also came and there was the holy saint beside him. And a frowning old scholar. Qin Qinglu winked at the old scholar. The old scholar was silent. Old Xiaotsai, it's up to you to smooth things out. It's me again? The donkeys also give some fodder to gnaw on the mill. What's more, in such a big scene with my thin arms and thin legs, can I blend in? Brother, don't you feel bad for your brother? Anyway, if something goes wrong with my big apprentice, I will go to Luapa Mountain to find your little apprentice. Then I try it? Hurry up. The old scholar laughed, stretched out his hand early, then held Jing Zhezhong's hand, shaking it vigorously. "Brother Jing, let's go, let's play a game of chess. I'm afraid to scare you, brother, my chess skills have skyrocketed over the years. Today is no different than before. If you don't hide your clumsiness, I will definitely win you." After being so troubled by the old scholar, the Taoist ancestor and the most holy teacher withdrew their hands almost at the same time. Li Sheng smiled and said, "There is no need to exchange money." Yu Dou asked, "Do you want to exchange money? You're not convinced?" Zheng Zhuzhong asked rhetorically, "Believe it or not, I'll exchange money with Lu Qin? The three of us, let's leave the 15 realms." The only one who was sitting, Han Xiaosa, sat there dumbfounded, shivering. "Dao Xian? What about Dao Xian? What is a real fairy fight? This scene is what it is. This is not the kind of harsh words that market teenagers meet on narrow roads." The old Xiucai sighed, "Brother Jing, why are you arguing with someone again? A gentleman should not speak up. If you can, don't speak up. Of course, it's best not to quarrel and fight. After all, people are really invincible. They all say that the shadow of a person's famous tree, only the wrong name is not given the wrong nickname. Is it a waste of fame? Besides, the realm of Lu Zhangjiao is very high. As for Li Shixing, forget it. After all, now it's my family." The most holy teacher probably couldn't listen anymore, so he coughed as a reminder to the old Xiucai not to fight over here. "The old Xiucai is bitter. I call it the opposite. If not, can Jing Zhuzhong listen?" In fact, Li Shixing had already noticed the situation here, so he wanted to come to Baidi City. The big deal was to play a game with Zheng Zhuzhong in advance. If you weren't thinking about defending the road for the little bottle, it wouldn't make much difference whether the game was played early or late. It's just that Li Shixing was blocked by Li Xing. Li Xing just asked him to prepare for the debate of the three religions, and he didn't care about the rest. Daozu looked up at the words. Zheng Zhuzhong is indeed a rare talent in 10,000 years, and there is no need to compete for the first place. Daozu said, "The 3 games of chess, you can play how you want to play." The holy master nodded and said yes. The old Xiucai nodded and said, 3 games are good, 2 wins and 1 loss. It's more fair, such as playing chess, whether you are in a good mood that day, whether you have enough to eat, whether you drink good wine or bad wine, your chess strength fluctuates. If you can't do it right, 3 games are good. After 1 game, you won't be arrogant or discouraged and prepare well for the next game. Qin Qinglu said with a smile. Old Xiucai has a lot of insight into playing chess. The old Xiucai still nodded. The insight is quite unique. The second sect, who came with the sword on his back to teach Yu Dou, just looked in the direction of the overturned mountain in the past. Daozu laughed heartily. Zheng is in the middle, as you can see. Now that we finally meet, it's getting what you want. In the secret realm of Baidi City, a third Zheng Zhuzhong appeared, wearing a Taoist robe, wearing a Taoist crown and full of Taoism. Daozu stepped out and came to this secret realm. He smiled and said, "None of them are swordsmen, but the onlookers are clear, so let's follow the vines with fellow Taoists and talk about Kendo and One." I never thought about Zheng Zhuzhong but smiled and said, "I would rather know what the first underworld is about being lost." Daozu said, "The name can be strong but the Tao can't be." You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.